public hearing, a public meeting of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 250195, 250196, 250197, 250198, 250199, 250200, 250201, 250202, 250210, 250211, 250212, and resolution number 250214. Ms. Lawhead, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Squilla. Councilmember Gautier. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Young.
Okay.
Councilmember Young. Councilmember Driscoll. Councilmember Lozada. Councilmember Bass. Councilmember Phillips. Councilmember O'Neill. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Harity. Councilmember Ahmad. Councilmember Landau. Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember O'Rourke. Council President Johnson.
Present. We have a quorum. And this meeting is now called to order. Ms. Lawhead, will you please read the title of the resolutions?
Bill number 250195, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Wage and Net Profits Tax by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250196, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2026. Bill number 250197, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2026 capital budget. Bill number 250198, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2026 through 2031 inclusive. Bill number 250199, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2600 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Business Income and Receipts Taxes to revise certain tax rates and end certain exclusions from the tax on receipts, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250200, an ordinance amending Chapter 12-1000 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Traffic Code to revise the fee for the use of parking meters, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250201, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1800 of the Philadelphia Code entitled School Tax Authorization to provide for an increase in the tax the Board of Education of the School District of Philadelphia is authorized to impose on real estate, and amending Chapter 19-1300 entitled Real Estate Taxes to establish an equivalent reduction in the tax rate for the city real estate tax, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250202, an ordinance amending Section 19-1806 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Authorization of Realty Use and Occupancy Tax to eliminate certain exemptions, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250210, an ordinance amending Section 10-1001 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Fees of Commissioner of Records to increase the portion of fees for the recording of deeds and mortgages and related documents to be used for housing trust fund purposes under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250211, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1400 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Realty Transfer Tax by revising the rate of the tax, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 250212, an ordinance to amend Chapter 19-4400 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Development Impact Tax to end imposition of the tax under certain terms and conditions. Resolution number 250214, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2026 through 2030 and incorporating revisions with respect to fiscal year 2025, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority pursuant to an intergovernmental cooperation agreement by and between the city and the authority.
Today, we will continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal year 2026, a capital program and forward-looking capital plan for fiscal year 2026 through fiscal year 2031. This morning, we will hear testimony from the Law Department, the Office of the District Attorney, and the Defender Association of Philadelphia. This afternoon, we will hear testimony from the Philadelphia's Sheriff's Office. Ms. Lawhead, can you please call the first panel, which consists of the District Attorney, Larry Krasner, Chief Defender, Keisha Hudson, and Chief City Solicitor, Ms. Renee Garcia. Can you please all come to the panel? As you are surrounded by greatness, Larry, Mr. District Attorney, I'm going to ask for Ms. Keisha Hudson, Chief Defender, to please begin her testimony.
Are you ready, Council President?
I said, Ms. Keisha Hudson, Chief Defender, can you please begin your testimony?
One Philly, a city united. I just want to.
Yes, sir. One city, a city united. Ms. Hudson, please speak into the microphone, begin your testimony.
Good morning, City Council President, esteemed members of City Council. My name is Keisha Hudson. I am the Chief Defender at the Defender Association of Philadelphia. I'm going to keep my remarks brief today because I have submitted extensive written materials to City Council. The Defender Association of Philadelphia, as you know, has contracted with the City of Philadelphia since 1973 to provide indigent defense services to people who are poor in the City of Philadelphia. And last year, we rose from 70% to 75% of the people in Philadelphia that we represent that come into the system. We represent not only youth in dependency, but we also represented youth in delinquency. Last year, we had 2,900 children that we represented in dependency and delinquency. We also represent adults from preliminary arraignment all the way through to appellate proceedings and in homicide. That number last year was almost 34,000 adults that we represented. We are a large organization. We are an organization of 530 defenders. That includes only 29 social workers for that adult client population. I want to spend my time talking about where we are right now, not only in the City of Philadelphia, but statewide and nationally. I presented a budget of $15 million, which to this body may seem like a large request. But our budget, as it stands compared to my counterparts who are sitting with me and to the Office of Public Safety, is not nearly where it needs to be. Our base budget as it stands today is $66 million. We are a 91-year-old organization founded in 1934. The Office of Public Safety that this body created is a 1-year-old organization, and its budget is $1 million less than ours at $65 million. So I come to you today wanting to stress again where we are. When we look at our counterparts, when we look at the Defender Association, when we look at the resources that we have, it is not enough. We are critically underfunded. We have been critically underfunded, and thanks to the work of this esteemed body, including City Council President, we have made strides in closing that funding gap, but we need more. I want to talk just a little bit about the things that I think this body should know, starting with our starting salaries. As of today, the starting salary for a public defender at the Defender Association of Philadelphia is $64,000 a year. The starting salary at the District Attorney's Office is $70,000 a year. And the starting salary at the Law Department is $79,000 a year. Compared to our collar counties, where the starting salary is $72,000 a year, and New Jersey, which is at $75,000, Maryland, which is at $85,000. We cannot be a revolving door when it comes to being able to recruit and retain the attorneys, the excellent attorneys that we have at the Defender Association, but it is not tenable in a city where it costs $75,000 a year to rent a one-bedroom apartment for our lawyers, who are the best in the city, the state, and the country, to start at $64,000. We are losing lawyers every month because they cannot support themselves on the salaries that they earn, and they deserve more. We have staffed over 200,000 hearings last year. We continue to do more without a single additional resource that includes helping the prison decarcerate because it is under contempt under the Remick litigation. We have staffed early bail hearings in partnership with the courts and the District Attorney's Office. We have staffed wellness court and without an additional cent. I sit here before you today, and I will close with this. We don't get our rent paid from the City of Philadelphia. We pay real estate taxes back to the City of Philadelphia. Last year, that was $330,000, which we cannot get waived. We do not get any health care benefits from the city. We do not get a pension from the city. We get no support in infrastructure or technology. No support at all. So when you look at our budget as compared to the district attorney's budget, the law department's budget, and OPS's budget, we in fact, under this mayor's proposal, received a cut this year. The only allocation we got was $1 million for wellness court. But when you look at what we have to pay and the costs associated with what we have to pay that my counterparts here have covered by the City of Philadelphia, that $1 million is really a budget cut. It reflects a budget cut. We are at a reflective point right now in our city and our state and our country. I presented a $15 million budget that I classified as a transition budget. And I met one-on-one with many of you, and I thank you for giving me and my team the time to meet, to talk about the various issues. But I presented that $15 million budget to you, and we need every penny of that $15 million. There's a lot that is coming to the city. I have 45 children that I represent in dependency who are at risk of deportation. We had one child deported last week without any due process. We have defunding in mental health and drug addiction services. Our client population is rising. It will continue to rise. And we need these resources in order to meet the moment and be the well-funded and well-resourced, constitutionally entitled council for the city of Philadelphia. Thank you, and I will take questions.
Thank you very much. Chief Solicitor Renee Garcia.
Good morning, Council President and council members. I'm Renee Garcia, the city's solicitor, and I'm pleased to testify this morning as to our proposed fiscal year 2026 budget. As you know, we run a full-service civil law firm that supports the entire city. We are at approximately 400 people. We handle all civil matters in the city, whether that's labor and employment, short dumping, real estate transactions for rebuild. We handle privacy issues. We handle tax collection. Our affirmative litigation brings in tens of millions of dollars every year. It is our privilege to do this work. It is a purpose-driven department that we run, and we are committed to principles of equity. We are committed to serving the people of Philadelphia. We are committed to municipal government in a hard time when the rule of law is not necessarily respected in all courts. And so today I want to express my profound gratitude for the 400 people who come to work every day in a time when we need local government attorneys more than ever. And we're seeing more and more candidates that want to work for us because they do believe in the purpose. And so I'm pleased to present this budget. It's a strong budget for my department, and it will help us to hire more people to do the work that we need to do, approximately 12 positions. And we will continue to support council, we'll continue to support the mayor in all the work that we need to do, which is more important now than ever. And I'm ready to take questions when you have them.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And Mr. Larry Krasner, District Attorney, please just state your name for the record and begin your testimony, sir.
My name is Larry Krasner. I'm the elected district attorney for the city of Philadelphia. Council President, I have an overview and greetings that are about 3 to 4 minutes, and then I have the substance, which is 8 to 10, and then I also have a brief conclusion, which would be about 3 minutes. Were you looking for the full testimony at this time?
I'm sure my members did their due diligence and already read your testimony, so if you could summarize your key points, and then we'll get right into the questioning. Is that okay, members? Is that okay, members? We good?
Very well. Good morning. Council President Kenyatta Johnson, Majority Leader Catherine Gilmore Richardson, for those of you here in person, greetings. For those of you here in spirit, greetings. Appropriations Chair, Councilmember Mark Squilla, and members of our esteemed Philly City Council as a whole. I run an office of more than 650 people, including sworn law enforcement, 300 plus attorneys, victim service advocates, and support staff professionals. I want to make sure, though, that we are very clear The parade that came walking in the door, that parade involves people on our team who are not within our office. More specifically, that parade involves our contracted victim services providers in Philadelphia, which comprise 9 different groups, and those groups need money. They have had no increase in funding for 15 years, and as we all know, it hasn't been the cheapest 15 years. They do incredible and important work. I'm going to read the names of their organizations, and I will ask them to rise as I do so that you can associate the face and the people and the incredible work they do with the name of that organization. They include Northwest Victim Services, Anti-Violence Partnerships, Victim Witness Services of South Philadelphia, WOAR, now known as the Philadelphia Center Against Sexual Violence, Concilio, Central Division Victim Services, Women Against Abuse, Northeast Victim Services, and Support Center for Child Advocates. As I'm sure you will know, members of council, from reading the testimony that has been provided, these are groups that provide absolutely essential work. That work is part of the public safety success that this city continues to enjoy. There's absolutely no question that when you protect witnesses and you protect survivors and you protect victims so they feel that they can testify, there's absolutely no question that when you address some of the trauma that is caused by some of the more violent and more disturbing crimes that occur in the city of Philadelphia, that you are doing things that will benefit us as long as we are alive. You're doing things that are incredibly important. We work with these organizations all the time, and our humble ask on their behalf, please understand this is not our money, okay? We're not getting any of this. This is their money. But please understand that our humble request here is only $347,276 in Class 200 that flows right through us to them. It does not allow us to increase the compensation for our new attorneys, which we need to do for equity, parity, and purposes of hanging on to extremely talented people, as I think has been mentioned here by my colleagues as well. It does not address the other budgetary needs that are itemized and specified here, which come to the numbers that are indicated in Section 2 of our testimony. But they are, to some extent, without a voice in the budget process, and they need to have that voice because the work that they do is so essential. I realize that's not a fulsome summary of this testimony, which goes on for a number of pages, but it is a point of particular emphasis. I see on a day-to-day basis the incredibly important work that they do. And simply put, it is not right that they're expected to do that amazing work with moderate funding and then wait for a raise for 15 years. It just isn't right. Therefore, I'm happy to take the bit of time that I have right now to make sure you all understand we view that as a tremendous priority, even though none of it sticks on our fingers, all of it goes straight through. And beyond that, for the time being, I will rest on the written testimony.
Thank you very much. Just have a couple brief questions before I turn over to my colleagues. And one, I just want to welcome back the City Council board member from the Defenders Association, Everett Gillerson. Let's give Everett a round of applause. I see him back there and sat in many meetings with him regarding the public safety of the city of Philadelphia. So it's always good to see you, Everett, doing the hard work. And to Ms. Keisha Hudson, defense never rests.
Never.
I think I know that more than anybody, and so I thank you for your hard work and your dedication to making sure that those who need representation receive quality representation, and most importantly, you reshaping the identity of the Defenders Association, taking a comprehensive approach. I think y'all just, you created the Office of Education Advocate through the Defenders Association?
Yes, I'm pleased to announce that through grant funding, we will be bringing on an education advocate. to work with our dependent and delinquent youth. As you know, City Council President, the school to prison pipeline is a real one. We've switched our thinking and now called it the womb to prison pipeline. As you know, 1 in 4 children who start in dependency end up in our delinquency system, and 1 in 5 of our adult clients started in dependency, and oftentimes the thorough thread of missed opportunities for intervention starts in the education setting. Teachers see students for 8 hours a day, and we see with our clients missed opportunities to intervene early before they are removed from their parents and placed into the foster care or adoption system. So this education advocate will be an incredible add to the work that we do for our clients. I also want to mention that through grant funding, we have started a reentry practice for the first time to work with our adult clients. We are currently working with 12 clients. It's one person, so 12 clients on State Road. So we are grateful that we have expanded our practice and will be expanding our practice this year.
Okay. And also working with social workers with your clients as well as a way to provide wraparound services.
We can
during that
provide
first
wraparound
intake.
services, not for our adult clients. We have, as I mentioned in my testimony, we have 29 social workers that works with almost 34,000 people.
24 for 34,000?
29 for 34,000.
29 for
We
34,000.
refer. Our social workers, for those who are watching, are just amazing. They come to work for us with a master's degree, starting at $45,000 a year. They could go anywhere else in the city, in the counties, but they come to work for us because they believe in the mission. I'm grateful to them, to our entire staff, but we cannot provide wraparound services. We would like to do that, and that's why we are hoping to get additional funding to hire more social workers to be able to do that.
But you do have social workers that service the clients, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And District Attorney Larry Krasner, just always want to acknowledge your hard work in working with this body under the leadership of our Chair of Public Safety, who's going to lead this session, Councilman Curtis Jones. Rather was the carjacking unit, responding and making sure we're addressing those who are carjacking individuals. Rather, it's an issue near and dear to me, addressing the issue of gun violence and making sure that we're very, very strategic as we work with the Gun Violence Task Force. And I also see you have a new unit that deals with guns, which I also thought was very, very interesting. It's the Prolific Gun Offenders Unit, which I'll allow you to elaborate on at the appropriate time. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that we're at a 30-year historic low when it comes to homicides and shootings in the city of Philadelphia. And pretty much those numbers have decreased under your watch. And so I think that deserves some level of support. People think, are we celebrating? And we are acknowledging that the work that we've done comprehensively to focus on prevention early on, focusing on boots on the ground organizations so young people don't pick up guns in the first place, and specifically focusing on how to make sure we address recidivism but not increase mass incarceration. So I just want to acknowledge you as a part of that work that this body has been doing in partnership with our law enforcement agencies, including yourself, and also you never being shy and saying, if there are issues and concerns, you invite members of council to meet with you and your team. I think it was once a month. We would come and sit with your team and ask questions and do a deeper dive on the work that the district attorney's office is doing. And so just want to acknowledge you from that aspect. And I guess I'll do a deeper dive into the work. Give me an idea. So we know we had a historical low when it comes to gun violence and shootings. There was a trace report that talked about amongst juveniles, though, you had to charge more juveniles as adults regarding gun crimes. Giving us an idea of what are we doing to address that? What do you think are some of the symptoms that our young people are continuously picking up guns? And then last, I do acknowledge the hard work and dedication of the victim advocate organizations that you do have working day in and day out to support families who have been victims or co-victims of all types of violence. And so let's talk about the juvenile issue.
Yes, Council President, thank you for that. But I do, just before I get into the weeds with that, I do want to say, I believe it has been a partnership, and it's been a partnership that has really had some successes. If we look back, and this is something I've discussed with a number of members of council, if we look back at some of the crises that we faced in the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, time and time again, when council raised concerns, same concerns that we had, whether it was about house theft and retail theft, or it was about carjacking, or it was about particular corners in Kensington where there was, uncontrolled drug activity, or whether it was robbery. Time and time again, when we came to council and said, we'd like to have a unit to specialize in this, we have seen council respond, we've seen council fund it, and we have seen that specialization, that investment in specialized work in that particular area has borne fruit. We have seen crime come down in one of those areas after another, after it's funded and after we get these units up and running. Even recently, when council, in conjunction with the mayor, were agreeable to some funding so that we had more resources to prosecute short dumping, an emphasis of the mayor's Cleaner Greener initiative. Even when we came up with that money, we were so appreciative that we started doing the work without the money. The money doesn't show up till July. But, we did what you do with tape and paper clips. We found some people to get the work going, because it does take a minute. So I do believe it's a partnership. I think time and time again, when there have been real concerns about criminal activity, we have all been able, in a collaborative way, council, the mayor's office, government, those working community-based organizations outside of government have been able to come together. I also bring you some good news. On my numbers, it's not the lowest homicide in 30 years. It's the lowest homicide in over 50 years, lowest number of homicides this morning. The second closest one, we're at 66. The second closest year was 73. So we are actually well ahead of some of those other years.
You said 73?
Yes.
1973?
No, the number was 73. It was
sorry.
around 2014, I believe. 2014,
around
2015,
2014. Okay,
in the last 50 years. But, we also, as we look at other categories of crime, 15 out of 18 that are listed by the Philadelphia Police Department are down. And they are down after 2024, which was the year in the United States when there was the biggest improvement in public safety in U.S. history, okay? So, I got up this morning and there's something on TV about how crime is going up. Really? Really? Crime is going up? Well, that is interesting, because we have facts.
Numbers don't lie.
And then we have fear. And I appreciate that council has always stuck with the facts and has always been able to work with us. Even when we didn't know the solution or we didn't see the same solution, has been able to work with us to try to get at those results. We are seeing crime come down and down and down. Shootings come down and down and down. Victims of shootings come down and down and down in category after category. And I think council deserves a lot of that credit. When we talk about juveniles in particular, the issue that often comes up, to which you have alluded, Council President, is that we're seeing more juveniles arrested for homicide and more juveniles arrested for shooting in some instances. It's part of a kind of an interesting riddle, because we are also seeing fewer people between the age of 22, or even between the ages of 18 and 22, or between 18 and 25. We're seeing fewer of them. Exactly why? Once again, I'll stick with the truth. I don't know. I'm not sure. And I also think we have to bear in mind that when you talk about that, we don't know the ages of the people who do not get caught, okay? So one of the powerful techniques that has been used by the Philadelphia Police, federal partners, and our office is social media analysts. And I don't think there's any question that the shooters most active on social media are younger. That is how they brag about what they did. That is how they manifest their arguments and beefs back and forth. That's how they challenge the other side. It's become a powerful source of evidence. So it is possible that part of what's happening here is they have made themselves easier to catch. And so we are seeing more of them arrested. But if you look at the population of people who are not caught, that you would see a more adult population. That's possible. There's no way of knowing if that's what's actually going on. It is also very clear, even including from the press conference we did yesterday, which was about an arms dealer. It was about, people who were engaging in straw purchasing, buying a whole bunch of handguns. They were being dismantled and they were being shipped, concealed inside of microwave ovens into New York, into New Jersey, and also to the Dominican Republic. It is also clear that our state legislature has left us awash in guns. Last year in Pennsylvania, there were almost 800,000 guns purchased lawfully. And that, of course, doesn't even count the ghost guns that are circulating after they're built, doesn't even count the illegal trade. But it was 800,000 guns just last year in Pennsylvania. Do you want to know how many were taken off the street by law enforcement? And I don't say this to criticize law enforcement at all. They work hard and this is important work. 17,000. So what is your net new number of guns purchased lawfully? 783,000 more guns in Pennsylvania purchased lawfully. The fact that we are in a position with a 50-year low on the 6th of May of 2025 in homicides, while we have more guns on the street every single day over those 50 years, is something to encourage us to work harder and do better and do everything we can to try to get the guns out of the hands of those young people. Having said that, we have seen the complete dismantling of shooting groups that are populated by young people, many of them juveniles, not just the young
Say
bag
the
chasers.
names for the record.
Sure. Well, among them are the young bag chasers, 02 to 4, the senders, and we have so many others half shut down or on the radar as our investigations with our excellent partners
So for
continue.
the record, these are groups of gangs that are responsible for shooting and warring in neighborhoods that you have prosecuted and taken down, for the record?
That is correct, sir. There's another 5 or 6. I can dig up the names for you if that is of help. But, this is real, and it's something, once again, I'm not saying it's us, because it has been a wonderful collaboration with the FBI, with ATF, with DEA, with the Attorney General's agents, with the Philadelphia Police Department in particular. It has been a wonderful collaboration. But some of the modern enforcement techniques that we are using, based upon the limited but very powerful forensics that we have, some of those techniques have really borne fruit. We do not have a record in Philadelphia of taking down shooting groups. We have a record of shooting groups' names living for decades as they are passed from one generation to another, and people are shooting each other over stuff that started long ago, and they don't even know why. That's the truth. But we are seeing some of them be shut down. I think that the solutions here have to include things like this. The state shut down an awful lot of juvenile facilities because they were snake pits, and then did not replace them with ones that are effective and humane. That's a problem. If you take a 15-year-old who's been swept up into a life where people have guns and there are threats back and forth, and you simply incarcerate them with no treatment, with no education, with no effort to address the underlying issues, they're going to come out educated in crime. If, on the other hand, you are able to put them into humane institutions where we can deal with them in the juvenile system, you have all those years from age 15 to 21 to try to address these issues and get them back on track. And we have seen so many times that not everybody, but the majority of those young people can be put back on track if we have those facilities. I know it's a problem with the state. You tear down, you don't rebuild. It's exactly what happened with mental health during the rise of mass incarceration, the dismantling of 85% of our mental health system, which was never replaced except by jail cells in the streets. That's the truth. But the city also has a role here, and I would be delighted to work with the city because the city does have the ability to contract with appropriate facilities. If they're not built in Pennsylvania yet, then we're going to have to find them somewhere. But the city does have the ability to contract with those facilities and to make it a priority. The more we do that, the more we will see people who have been rightfully arrested and put into custody reforming and coming out and not endangering public safety.
Okay, thank you. I also want to acknowledge the work of G. Lamar Stewart, who takes the call at any time of the hour. I think I caught him before going to church service the other day. Sunday morning, I know you was preparing your sermon. I apologize. I needed some help trying to help a constituent. And I see Fitzy back there, who's the head of the Gun Violence Task Force Unit. Thank you also for help getting them guns off the streets, and the whole district attorney team. And Aunt Brown is around here somewhere, young man who you recruited to come and work with you. I'm going to have Ketchy Lozada talk about where we at on retail theft policy at some point in time, as well as Councilmember Jim Harris. I know those issues that they're very, very passionate about in terms of the Kensington corridor, but I just want to also, Renee, and thank you for your hard work as well on behalf of the administration. Sanctuary City, at some point in time, and I can hear Rouland down my ear now, like, what are we going to do? At some point in time, they're going to acknowledge the city of Philadelphia from D.C. What are we going to do defense-wise, legal-wise, to fight back, if we could talk about it?
Sure. Pursuant to the President's executive order, in probably a month's time, the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, will issue letters to cities, counties, states maybe, and designate them as sanctuary city. We have no definition of what they think is a sanctuary city. We do not use that term sanctuary city. It is a term that is bandied about to accuse municipalities, counties, and states of illegally harboring migrants or undocumented people. That is not the case. We, as I have been very clear, we do not honor detainers. We honor judicial warrants. We are backed up by Third Circuit case law in that respect. So we believe that we are following the law. We know that we are following the law. Nevertheless, we may get this letter designating us as a sanctuary city. Pursuant to the executive order, again, we will have time to respond, and I expect the mayor will have many conversations and follow her diplomatic procedure as she does. And then we will see what comes next. Right?
Okay.
We will see if they try to cut off funding, which we've already litigated this issue. We litigated this issue in 2017 and 2018. They cannot cut off funding. It is very clear. If we have to litigate, then we'll do that. But
That's
we
what I wanted to hear.
I
We prepared to
expect that
fight.
I will expect there will be many national lawsuits between now and when these letters come out, and when the letters come out, and when funding is cut off. And as I've said before, it is an hour by hour, day by day. There has already been a lawsuit filed in San Francisco by a number of cities, and they have succeeded on a limited injunction out there. So the legal road is long, but the courts have really been stepping up to protect the rule of law.
Okay, just one small question. We talk about equity in contracting, minority participation. FY24, historically underrepresented groups accounted for 76% of law department contract partners, but in FY25 is 65%. So what's the disparity in terms of the decreasing going into the new year? Is that a change of major contracts, or?
It ebbs and flows depending on when we're entering contracts and what contracts we need. But I want to be clear that we believe that diverse attorneys are important on our matters. It is the most important to have attorneys both internally and externally with real-lived experience in the city of Philadelphia from different backgrounds. And when I came to the law department, what I found was the big firms were using minority firms to make their numbers, right, to show that they had diversity. And that was not something that sat well with me. And so what I have done is entered into contracts with those smaller firms that have minority partners so that they could do the work and get the credit themselves. And that encourages our big firms to then bring up diversity within their ranks. And now diversity is a bad term that is being bandied about, but there is diversity that we can always do that is legal, right? We're not talking about quotas. We're not talking about picking people because of their race or their gender or their background, but what we're talking about is broadening the pool and making sure that different firms have an opportunity to apply, to come forward, to make the pitch, and to be awarded on their merit. And so that is something that I believe in. It is something that I believe in hiring both internal and external counsel, and we see the dividends of that. We see in a room when we have the thorniest legal issues, when we're dealing with the opioid crisis, or we're dealing with public nuisance, we know that we need a variety of people in the room, because if everybody looked like me, it wouldn't be effective. right? If everybody looked like you, everybody looked like even one person in this room, it wouldn't be effective. We need everybody. And so we are constantly striving to broaden the pool, and we will continue doing that.
Thank you. It's crazy. They say we can't even say diversity. That's like saying you can't say black people. Totally racist in my mind, but it is what it is. We got to keep fighting. I want to let the chairman of public safety lead this round, and then next Councilmember Jim Hardy. Councilmember
Thank you, Mr.
Curtis
President.
Jones Jr.
I want to thank the dream team up here. They look like they could defend us well as a city in whatever case in courtroom. So I want to thank you for that. There's over 3,000 parts in a jet engine. And all of them have to work together in order to create lift so that a plane or jet flies. Between you and the boots on the ground and the people that work for you, we are seeing lift in the right direction as it relates to reductions in fatalities, in Part 1 crimes, and I want to go through that list with you. I want to also say to Keisha Hudson, Chief Defender, thank you. You have the most comprehensive continuum of what happens when we get it right and what happens when we get it wrong with our young people. You see them as advocates that you defend in the beginning, and sometimes you have to defend them as the defendant, please rise, when we get it wrong. So your input on how we can early or have intervention, think about, and we'll answer, that's the question for you. For you, Madam Solicitor, thank you for representing us in some hostile courtrooms up in Harrisburg and others. So I need you to give us a quick update like you do every monthly with us on the crimes, on the court cases that you are defending and where we are. D.A. Krasner, I need you to look at, there's facts and fears. Where are we down at in the crimes? By category. If we gave you money a while ago to create a carjacking unit, where are we in carjackings? So take us through that. I wanted to get my questions on the books before the bell rung. So I'd like to start with you, Madam Solicitor.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. We have a very strong mandate from the mayor and from City Council to make this city safer. And as you know, we do that in a number of different ways. I will take you through our affirmative litigation and our legislative work. We are defending the ordinance on 3D printing. We have been successful there. That is up in the PA Supreme Court. We are briefing that now. We were successful on getting rid of a Second Amendment claim for our gun range case. We unfortunately lost on the Crawford case that was fighting preemption, but we will continue to fight preemption. We still have our lost and stolen case, which is...
Elaborate, lost and stolen.
So our lost and stolen is an ordinance that requires a gun owner, a lawful gun owner, to report when a gun is no longer in their possession. So either has been stolen or lost or what have you, right? And we strongly believe that this is not preempted. It does not infringe upon your right to own a gun, to transfer a gun, because you no longer have the gun. And so we are hoping the PA Supreme Court will take that up as well. We are defending our switch ordinance, which we have been successful so far. We have had our ghost gun litigation that we settled, right? And actually Polymer 80 has filed for bankruptcy. That was the company selling the ghost gun kits, but no ghost guns are able to be sold in Philadelphia and the Collier counties for 4 years. And then JST Supply, who does the gun shows, cannot sell throughout Pennsylvania for, I think, 4 years as well. Unserialized ghost gun kits. And then we have a lawsuit pending against 3 gun dealers. This is a straw purchasing case. One of them has surrendered its gun license already, and we're fighting with the other 2. So, and I've got some more ideas up my sleeve, so you may see more coming. That is the overview. We're also very active in our code and public nuisance space, where we are working with the police on nuisance businesses, skilled game, tobacco, doors and windows, all of that. We are also working with the prisons to make the prisons safer. With Commissioner Resnick, we've done a lot of money, obviously, coming out of the Remick litigation. We have $25 million set aside, and we're doing that. Our child welfare, we shouldn't forget about them, making this city safer for the nearly 3,000 children that are in custody right now, and our people are doing that work day in and out. I want to shout out our employment group, making it safe to be at work, and our data privacy work as well, to keep people's information safe, right? Because that is a vulnerability as well. So we think about safety very broadly, and we're working with all of our partners.
Can I
Council
put a
President.
point of information just real quick, Chairman Jones? So when you talk about these different partners in terms of the administration agenda to make sure the city is safe, right? So we have a contract with the Public Defenders Association, right? And so wouldn't that be a part of the strategy to address the issue of recidivism? And so people who are involved in the system through trying to get representation, right, for something they may have done, but during that point of intervention, right, is an opportunity to kind of steer them in the right direction so they won't continue on that path of doing something bad in the city. Like, is that part of your strategy as well? Because it's kind of like, it's a Defenders Association over here, but we're doing everything for the police, we're doing everything for the district attorney's office, and I know it's a contract, but I think, and help me out for the lawyers in the room, but there's a mandate for people to have legal representation in the city of Philadelphia, right? Part of their constitutional rights. So did that play a role in your strategy?
For immigration, are you saying specifically?
Yeah.
Or general? Yeah. So that money, what do they call it? PAFUP, P-A-I-F-U-P. The administration has been very clear that will be allocated appropriately. They are waiting for the Office of Immigrant Affairs to hire their director, which we are in full steam ahead in hiring that person. But it's not as if that money is going away. It just has to be allocated. Quite honestly, I will defer politely to the administration. I'm not involved in paying money out, but we work very closely with the Defender's Office in all matters related to children in particular. And I think we have a very healthy relationship, and we are talking as well as we enter this new frontier where there is concern around immigrants. But on the specific funding, I will defer to the administration.
Yeah, I wasn't really, maybe my question might have been interpreted. Talking about the immigrants, I was just saying overall strategy.
Overall strategy.
Probably may be a better question for Adam Gere and the administration, but you were just touting all the different agencies that y'all are working with to make sure the city is safe. So since you were touting everybody you're working with, I'm kind of saying, okay, well, this would be a part of that conversation to address recidivism before individuals go on a life of crime and gun violence. That's all I
I
want to
agree
say
with you.
for the record. Chairman Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. So we're in key for a number of cases that deal directly with public safety.
Yes.
And you and your team have been, chin to chin with some folk from other parts of the Commonwealth and federal government and private sector to defend us and the bills that we pass, the bills that we've implemented. So thank you for the update on that. I'm gonna go with the district attorney. I want you to go down by these park crimes. We funded a lot of stuff, and we're seeing results. And, if people are going around telling us that it's not working, two things can be true at the same time. We can be for criminal justice reform, but we can also be for public safety. It's not a or, it is an and. And what the stats have proven is that is true. Can you give us an update on where we are on different parts of crime?
I certainly can. So I check every day, and I encourage any of you who are interested to check every day at the Philadelphia Police Department's publicly available website. Sometimes I check it a couple times today. So as of this morning, meaning through midnight last night, this year, we have seen almost a 26% decline in homicide over last year. Rape down almost 9% over last year. Robbery with a gun, which goes to the carjacking issue, down almost 23% over last year. And remember, last year was not only a national record for public safety improvement, but Philadelphia led big cities in the United States. We were the locomotive on this train going in the right direction. That is robbery with a gun. If we look at robbery By other means, meaning without a gun, almost 8% decline. We take a look at aggravated assault with a gun, that is down almost 5% over last year. As we move into the property crimes, we see residential burglary is down 11%. We have theft from auto down almost 12%. Theft in general down very slightly over last year. Retail theft is down 8.09% to be precise, because I know it's a matter of concern to all of us. And if we look at auto theft, that is also down 5.29%. Overall, violent crime down almost 3%. Overall, property crime down over 6%. And as we look at two of the most important categories, ones that didn't used to be reported, but thank goodness they are now, we look at shooting incidents, once again, down 16.44%. Shooting victims down 11.34%. And this is after the year when Philly led the nation among big cities, cities of 1 million or more, in public safety improvement. Just to put a finer point on it so that we don't get it twisted, as they say, Philadelphia has been getting safer for 4 consecutive years at a rate that is better and higher than the average of other big cities. So if we go back to the bad old days in the pandemic and look at when it peaked and started to improve all over the country in big cities, you had an 8% decrease in homicide. Philly went down 11. The next year, you had a 13% decrease in homicides. Philly went down 20. And then in 2024, you had a 23%, an amazing 23% national average reduction among cities of 1 million or more. 23%, Philly was 35, okay? Year after year after year, we are leading the way despite being the brokest of those cities, despite being in a state that is, frankly, so inadequately regulated when it comes to guns that we are the supplier for New York and New Jersey crime guns. Despite all those challenges, we are leading the way. And once again, I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. We should probably pat these victim services providers on the back and everybody else who's in this room. I don't need a pat on the back. And we should also pat the commissioner on the back, a couple of them, and a mayor or two. We should probably pat them on the back and everybody in council. But these are remarkable achievements that should really encourage us to continue on this path of deep investment in prevention, deep investment in forensic science, and understanding the value of what the public defender does and what the city solicitor does and what the DA's office does. There's a lot of places that need money, but we are seeing a very significant return on investment when that investment is made in these areas.
I would like to just end with Defender Hudson, who pointed out to me at the 100-shooter review that the young man or woman that we don't intervene with early becomes the defender. Please rise, and you keep them in your portfolio throughout. And what things can you tell us that we can do to intervene earlier so that what there was I believe a conviction yesterday of the individual up in, the shootout, the conviction, what was his name?
Maurice Hill, the Maurice Hill case.
Yeah, you negotiated him out to surrender and convicted him, but how can we find him earlier before he offends?
I say often that when our clients come to us, however young or old they are, that is because all systems have already failed them. And I mean that intently. Philadelphia leads the nation in the number of children, black and brown children, removed from their homes and placed in dependency. We are number one. We all know that children have a right to be with their parents, but we are removing children at a large rate. And we have made improvements in the last few years under Commissioner Ali's leadership, but we have a ways to go to change that. So whether it's in the family system or the family policing system, or whether it is in the communities that our clients are raised, we have kids who are living in traumatized areas that have been disinvested in over decades. There's no green space. There are few outlets for them. And I just want to remind all of you that we do dependency work with the Defender Association, but we don't come in until after the child is removed from the home. That is when we come in. So we don't see what is happening to that child until the removal has happened and a petition has been filed, then we get appointed. But we do strongly believe and are working hard with our partners in the law department and community legal services and others to see what can be done to keep that child in the home. When we look at the children who are coming in delinquency system, we had last year over 1,300 kids who spent at least one night in the detention center. A third of them had a dependent history. A third of those children. We do not do any juvenile reentry from our perspective. We don't have the capacity in our office. Right now, our most serious cases are handled by a phenomenal group of 5 attorneys. They carry over 100 cases each. So we simply need, and I keep going back to staffing, I keep going back to resources, I keep going back to needing to lower caseloads, so we can focus on the children who need help early and connect them with the resources, including wraparound services. With supports for juvenile reentry, right, we're talking about 455 children, right, that we cannot work with on reentry. We have social workers in our juvenile delinquency systems, but we have 5 of them. And as I said to you last year, we represented over 1,500 children who are in our delinquency system, 5 social workers. So we have no reentry supports. We need more in order to do the work we can do. We can intervene, and we have intervened, and we have many success stories of children who are accused and were found guilty or adjudicated delinquent of very, very serious offenses who are now in college and beyond. We had a former defender come and visit us who started in our dependency system, and then he was in our delinquency system. He came back, worked as a social worker. He then went to law school, and now he's an assistant federal defender. So there are success stories. Members of this body who have had family members or friends know that they're success stories, but it's with the right investment. Our clients do not get a private counsel. They don't get a crisis manager. They get a overworked, underfunded public defender who's doing their best to represent them, and maybe they will get social services referral if we have the staffing to do that.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity, then Councilmember Dr. Anthony Phillips, then Councilman Jamie Gaultier.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you all for coming today. Council President, I had some questions about the AMP court and stuff like that for him, but since you brought up with the juvenile justice, last night I spoke at a graduation at the Philadelphia Juvenile Justice Center for a group of kids that were graduating the PTTI course up there. PTTI is in Councilman Young's district on Girard Avenue. It used to be the Berin Institute. Great program. Something like 20-something kids started the program, but only 12 actually finished. And it wasn't that the 12 that finished were, the smarter of the kids. The other kids either were released and weren't able to complete the program. But I got to spend some time. It was kind of messed up. We couldn't even take pictures with the kids because we had to blot out their faces if we did, which was just a shame because they were very excited. They did it really nice for them. They had cap and gowns for them and stuff like that. And they graduated out of 2 programs. One was electrical and the other was cement mason. And I had a chance to talk to these kids, and while they were in the juvenile justice system, they weren't bad kids. Once you got past the neighborhood slang and the little trying to be a tough guy type attitude, these kids were good kids, and what I really noticed was they were scared. Scared not only because of where they were, but scared because of they were getting ready to get out. But thank God for this program. All 12 of those kids will be starting Saturday classes as soon as they're released. It was great to see the families up there and the actual sense of pride that the kids felt as they were getting their certificates. And all those kids, they left with their OSHA certificate, which if you're in the construction business, you can't walk on a job in Philadelphia, let alone work on a job in Philadelphia without your OSHA 10 certificate at least. And these kids are leaving the detention center with that. So in my opinion, that actually gives them a leg up. It actually gives them a leg up on the kids that are graduating high school, because when they're both going to apply for that same construction job, that kid's going to get that job because he has the certificate. So, and I apologize, I'm an emotional guy. Stuff like that upsets me. So, first off, the discrepancy that I see between the Defender's Office and the District Attorney's Office in funding is ludicrous. I am for, right off the bat, 100% funding our Defenders Association.
Thank you, Councilmember.
It's not a wish, this is a necessity. Especially when it comes to the juvenile justice system. Having an attorney that knows the law is the difference in the path. You know what I'm saying? So I'm for giving the Defender's Office whatever we need to do to even the playing field. That being said, I'd like to just hear a little more about how do we get some more of these programs from each of you into not only the juvenile justice system, but our criminal justice system. Because the fact of the matter is that at some point, people are going to get out. And then what do they do? You know, people that have been there know, you know, when you first get out, you get home, first month, everything's peachy keen. You know, your wife or your girlfriend hasn't seen you in a while, and you know, they're happy, so the first month is really good. But then that second month comes, and she comes in from work, and you're still sitting on the couch because you can't get a job. So you end up going back to the same thing that sent you there in the first place, because that's the only thing you know. How do we get more of these programs? And give me some opinions from you, and I'll get to my other questions in the second round if we can.
You know, from a historical perspective, the birth of the prison was founded by the Quakers. It was meant for a very, very short stay and focused on rehabilitation. We have moved very, very, very far away from that. You are correct, the majority of our children, right? I mentioned that statistic of at least 1,379 kids spent at least one night in detention. And a third of them had more than one admission in a calendar year, right? That's the client population of youth we represented. And 455 children, right? Our children are reentry. If we had reentry, support could serve. We started a reentry practice. We did that through grant funding. We only have one staff member that's working currently with 12 adults. We need the same for our youth. We need more social workers that stay with them. We have a model like that in Dependency, and I really want to thank this body because I came to this body in 2022, my first budget cycle, talking about the fact that our dependent attorneys had over 100 children each. And through support with City Council, right, we're able to now lower that caseload to 55 to 60, which is remarkable. In my thinking, that's still too much because, again, we have a lot of work to do with our dependent kids, and we're seeing a third of them, of the current population, end up in delinquency. But we have no supports. I love our children. But I don't like to talk about second chances, but they didn't have a first chance to begin with. And I think we need to think through what we are funding and what sorts of interventions we need. And the fact that the best place for them is in the home, but the family needs supports, right? The entire family needs supports. If we have that child with that OSHA certificate go back into a community where they have unstable housing, or they have to find a way to support a mother and or father and or siblings, or they can't move away from the influences that they have in that community, without the right supports and the mentor and the job connection and real actual livable wages, right, to get themselves out of multi-generational poverty, we're just going to see that decline again. We should all care about funding public defense because 1 in 3 people come into the justice system. We all know someone who has, but the majority of my clients are coming home, and it doesn't end at incarceration because they're coming back to communities that are going to remain stagnant, and they themselves are not getting served in the institutions that they are in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
District Attorney, you have anything to add to that?
Certainly, I do want to point one thing out. As you all may know, my entire time in office, I have advocated for parity for the Public Defender's Office. Parity means fair, equivalent treatment, but let us not lose track of the following. My office does all the cases. We do all the criminal cases. The Public Defender's Office does a portion of the homicides. We do them all. The Public Defender's Office does not represent all the people who have private counsel. We do them all. So when we talk about parity, parity does not mean equal funding. It might very well mean that the public defenders are starting at $79,000 like the city solicitor, that my office has lawyers starting at $79,000 like the city solicitor. We're at 70. It might very well mean that. It should mean something like that because the work they do is incredibly important, and that's why I've supported them in that regard. But equal funding does not make sense. If you have one office doing all the cases.
That's not what I was suggesting at
Okay.
all. I get the comparative. That's not
I
where
got
I
you.
was going at all with the numbers. The numbers are what they are. Your office exactly does all the cases. It's a
Right.
lot larger. You do go against people who are represented by private attorneys.
Exactly.
I wasn't doing that. I'm just saying they're only trying to get to 15 million. You know what I mean? District attorney's at 58. There's got to be some kind of percentage there for the percentage of cases like you just stated, and the funding of their attorneys versus the funding for your attorneys.
Right.
That would make it even, not per se as 58 million, but 15 million to 58 million. You understand what I'm saying there?
Of course.
And the question was actually about how do you feel and how do we get some more of these actual programs into the Juvenile Justice Center to get these kids before they become adult offenders.
Understood.
That wasn't nothing against your office or how much your budget is. I get there's a
Councilman.
big difference. Sorry.
No, that's okay, Councilman. Can we have you go back to that on the second round?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Phillips.
Thank you so much, Chair. I just want to begin by thanking District Attorney's Office for being supportive in many endeavors that we've done in the city together, especially through G. Lamar Stewart's staff, but also District Attorney, thank you for your work that you've done. So on that lens, I'm just going to actually just run through all of my questions. Hopefully defenders, District Attorney, and also the law department can just take note of the questions. I'm going to give them all at once. First question is, District Attorney, there has been progress made in the past year or so since Mayor Sherrell Parker has come into office, as well as Commissioner Beto. What has changed? I just want to know what has changed in terms of showing that the progress that's been made compared to the other administration that you had to work with and the police department as well. I just want to ask that. The second question is, you mentioned that you're concerned about the rehabilitation of young people as well as not just adult citizens alone. When you do your prosecution, you don't want to just send them to any particular prison. How do you make those decisions in terms of your prosecution? Do you prosecute at a different level when you know they only can go to a certain detention center, or do you, how do you make a decision on what, trying to push a certain rehabilitation center for individuals? The next question I just have for the Defenders Association. The Defenders Association, can you just describe, for many people, they see you defending people, young people, adult citizens alike, and they're like, oh, you're just helping to defend criminals, right? People who just can't afford things. There's a perception out there in our city from some people. How do you measure the effectiveness of your diversion programming when you're trying to defend these individuals? And what are you doing to show the courts that in your defense they're going to be rehabilitated? And lastly, for the law department, I just want to know more broadly, how many active cases is the law department currently pursuing against landlords for code violations and unsafe living conditions? And then also, can you just explain to me, is the law department doing proactive work with license and inspections around landlords, and other situations that are going on? So basically, we want to be more, are you having a proactive process of prosecuting landlords in the city? Thank you. I guess District Attorney can start us off, and then Defenders Association.
Councilmember Phillips, thank you for the questions. If I lose my way, because what can I say? It's been a long few weeks. If I lose my way and I misinterpret the question, please let me know. But I think there are some spectacular things that have been going on during this administration in terms of the DA's office's relationship with the police commissioner. And also, I think that the mayor has gone in the right direction in many ways that are very, very important. Just one example would be her commitment, unlike prior administrations, to $30 million for a state-of-the-art forensics lab made 2 budget addresses ago. That can have such an important impact. These numbers are truly remarkable, but oh my goodness, what would happen if we had that state-of-the-art forensic facility operating? I mean, I can tell you right now, I spoke to a high-level person in Phillips Police Department years ago about what it would mean, and he was bandying around the notion of an additional 10% decrease in violent crime, which would be an amazing thing. I don't want to take anything away from the prior commissioners. I had a very good relationship with both of them, and I don't want to take anything away from the mayor, the prior mayor. But I will say this, I think we all feel that the progress that was being made is moving more quickly now. I think we all see the result of being on the right track for a period of years, and the mayor is to be commended for that, and the police commissioner is to be commended. And I would also say, let us not forget the role that having a new head of the Fraternal Order of Police has played. There was a time under the old head of Fraternal Order of Police when you had a massive portion of Philadelphia police who had been categorized as injured on duty and unable to be on the streets, unable to testify, et cetera. All those doctors were picked by that prior head. And that is not how FOP President Roosevelt Poplar plays. We are seeing the numbers of officers, IOD, in other words, injured on duty and unavailable, getting back towards a normal rate of about 4% rather than the ridiculous rate of 18% that we saw under John McNesby. So I think that speaks to some of the excellent efforts that are being made by this administration that build on a few prior years of progress, but they build on them, and we just keep going. We just keep getting better. Crime is cyclical. It is going to bottom out. It is going to go back up at some point. That's just the reality. It relates to a myriad of factors so long it's hard to even include them. But we continue to make progress, and I have to feel it has a lot to do with the excellence of this administration, including both the police commissioner and the mayor, and obviously their executive staff in many different areas. Your second question, I'm going to beg your pardon and ask you to just remind me briefly, what was the second question?
Just 10 seconds, I just want to say, basically the question was, can you explain the role that your prosecutors play, your prosecutors play in helping to request judges to put them in certain rehabilitation centers that you believe can be stronger for their for their growth and development? Because you say that there's some prisons that are not out that are not doing as much growth and development. How does that play in your prosecution?
Well, council member, thank you for the question. You know, one of the great things about our administration is that we have Robert Listenby, who was Obama's chief of juvenile justice in the second term as a first assistant, and who is a national authority when it comes to these issues. I would phrase this a little bit differently. We flat out don't have access to facilities that we need for people who have done stuff that is serious, but is still best addressed in the juvenile system. They don't exist. They were closed, and they were not replaced with other facilities. So we do what we can within that context with what is made available to us 4 or 5 years after a lot of those facilities were shut down and were not rebuilt. You know, I will be very transparent with you. There are certain people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who would like their adult prisons full. They make money off of them up in Cole County and Elk County and other places named after minerals and deer. You know, that's what they like. And I see their hand in not providing humane facilities that will be more rehabilitative for young people as a way to pressure us into sending those young people to places where they will not get an education and their issues will not be addressed. So the issues are tough, but I will say this. If you look at someone like Marvin Robinson, a juvenile who committed an atrocious murder, you know, the U.S. Supreme Court does not permit life sentences for someone like him, but he's in an adult prison doing 35 years. You look at Amin Hurst. This was a juvenile who killed a number of people and also escaped. He's in an adult facility doing 50 years, okay? This is what happens with juveniles who are not appropriate for the juvenile system. And yet, on the other hand, I could point you to a girl, and I'm gonna keep her name out of it for appropriate reasons, a girl who at 14 was involved in killing a man who was using her for sexual purposes. And she is in the juvenile system, and that is where she belongs. That's where she's gonna get the help, the support that she needs, despite what she actually did, and then she will come out and be supervised and free in the adult system. So, you know, it's individual justice. It's about being extremely specific, extremely careful, and trying as much as we can to increase public safety by that sort of individual attention and separating the wheat from the chaff, as they say in the good book.
Thank you. And just real quickly from the Defender Association and then the Law Department.
Just to give you an idea, last year we made 740 referrals for mental health and substance abuse support. So I reference again, the systems have failed our youth and adult clients before they get to us. We do not have nearly enough resources pursuant to a Jefferson Hospital report that said that people who are looking to get better from substance abuse really have difficulty accessing treatment, the appropriate inpatient and outpatient treatment. People commit crimes or they are brought into the system. One, we get them because they're poor. Constitutionally, you get us because you have no resources to afford a counsel. But because we have the privilege of the attorney-client relationship, we get to know that client intimately. We get to know everything about them, and we get to approach what they need holistically. But we cannot do that without resources. It's not sustainable that after all the systems failed and they end with us, then we don't have the resources to help divert them. They are not just poor, they are laboring under substance abuse issues, severe mental health issues. The adolescent brain is a real thing. It is decades of research that is in multiple Supreme Court opinions. Boys don't mature till they're 26, I'm sorry. They don't. They are a car without brakes, as one of my favorite neurologists described them. A children's brain is like a car without brakes. They can't foresee consequences. They don't understand consequences. They can't life plan. So we have to meet them where they are, provide the resources they need until we get them to the point 26 and after. Girls develop a little earlier, as we know, at 25, until we get them to a place where we can provide stable supports and they can get out of the system. So we have to provide support for interventions, but we have to provide support for the advocate standing next to that child who was brought there by the failure of so many different systems, but are now here for us to advocate for.
I know, I just had that one quick question, but I'm running out of time for the Law Department. Thank you, that was helpful.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gauthier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to all of you, and thank you so much for everything that you do to bring justice to our city and to protect our city. Your work is vital and critical. I wanted to address my first comments and questions to Defender Hudson. First, thank you for your stellar leadership of the Defenders. Thank you for coming here and very clearly and succinctly laying out the case for your budget request. I agree with you that there needs to be parity among these three organizations, however we define parity, because poor people in this city deserve quality, free and fair legal defense, and our ability to do that is how we continue to root out racial injustices in the criminal legal system. I wanted to talk about PIFUP. The issue of where PIFUP funding will be housed has come up several times during the budget season. Immigration advocates have asked that the city raise the amount of money in this fund and move immigration defense work from MDO to the Defender's Office. And I just have to say, Solicitor Garcia, I respect you greatly. I've worked with you very closely on very hard things and respect your opinion, but I do not understand the administration's position on this. I do not understand why we would need to wait to bring on a new person to decide whether to fully fund immigration legal defense and to move it to an organization that's already doing that work. And frankly, you know, if we are hiring someone that has a different opinion than that, I would question whether we should hire them. And so I wanted to ask you, Defender Hudson, can you briefly describe how moving this funding right now to the Defenders would be beneficial for this work, and also how increasing this funding would be beneficial to this work in this environment that we're in right now?
Thank you, Councilmember Gautier, and thank you for your support of the Defender Association. We started to have conversations with the Nationality Services Center 3 years ago about moving immigration defense to the Defender Association. After Trump got elected, we realized that we needed to move quicker, and we wanted to start working with the area immigration nonprofits, HIAS and PERC and NSC to move immigration defense to our organization. That's the model in public defender offices in New York and around the country that have large immigrant population. Philadelphia's immigrant population or non-documented population is around 50,000. That proposal, I asked for 1.5 million this budget cycle out of the 15, but in anticipation that we were going to get the funding that has traditionally gone to HIAS and NSC would come to us for a total of 2 million. We needed to begin the work day one. Quite frankly, I'm bereft that we didn't start planning for this last year when we knew what might be coming. But our clients are under threat. We had a client that was detained by the police after his case was dismissed for lack of evidence. And he was escorted out by a police officer and handed over to ICE. No one saw warrants, but judicially signed warrants. So the threat is real. Our clients are being impacted. As I mentioned before, we have close to 45 dependent children right now who are non-citizens. We had one deported last week without any due process. We are behind. We are going to remain critically behind in the number of people who are going to come into the system who need representation in immigration federal court.
Thank you. The federal government is moving fast and furiously in their targeting of welcoming cities. We need to make the decisions right now, in this moment, to protect our people, and that's certainly a big part of my push this budget season. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council Lady. Councilwoman Lozada, and then Councilwoman Landau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being with us this morning. I'm going to ask all of my questions for the three of you and then come back in the second round so that I can get them all in at the same time. My first question is for the Law Department. The proposed funding request a section of the budget outlines the explanation of the code and public nuisance litigation unit. What specific matrix will you use to measure success in reducing short dumping and nuisance properties? And how will you coordinate with L&I and other departments to ensure the effective collaborative efforts? As you know, I deal with that in the 7th Council District. It's become a very serious problem, not just in the Kensington community, but across the district and almost in every neighborhood. And so can you talk to us a little bit about what your matrix are and how you're going to measure the success as far as as well as your collaborative efforts? And then for the district attorney's office, according to your program description of pretrial diversion programs, it references connecting defendants to resources as alternatives to incarceration. Could you please provide the breakdown of your specific funding allocations with your budget dedicated to the diversion programs and their expected outcomes, as well as how will the DAO's diversion programs complement or collaborate with other diversion programs in the city? And then for the defender, when we met, you mentioned some of the images that we've seen on social media as it relates to young children representing themselves in immigration hearings. Can you talk to us about how you and your office can prevent those types of situations from happening here, and why is that so important to not just young people in our community, but for their families as well?
I'm going to answer Councilmember Phillips's question the same time I answer your question, because I didn't get that on the record. But I do want to just correct the record, something that the defender said about the incident last week, just so it's accurate, that the person in question was not detained by the police and was walked down as he was offering translation services. So I just want to put that on the record. But as to public nuisance and short dumping, I do have some statistics, and Councilmember Phillips, I don't have statistics broken out by which cases are against landlords versus other property owners. But this year through March, our code team has handled in court 2,735 matters. And before the board of L&I review 1,559 matters. That's through March. We have filed 27 short dumping cases so far. We need to ramp up, and these positions will help us ramp up. We're getting a lot more referrals from both police and Clean and Green and L&I, and we work with them day in and day out, every day on public nuisance. We know that this is part of safety, right? Safe neighborhoods, safe neighbors. That has an effect on the overall neighborhood. So we will be using these 5 new positions to hire attorneys to really ramp up what we are doing in the courts. What we're also doing is looking at who the perpetrator is. Because sometimes there is a landlord or a property owner who maybe is, a mom and pop who we just need to get into compliance. And maybe there's a language access issue or lack of information, and we can work them to get them in compliance. And then we have, the bad guys. We have the Adam Ehrlichs and the Philip Pulleys of the world who have LLC on top of LLC, and they have they have a bunch of properties. The guys who own Brish Shalom. And this is where we're really ramping up with data, with the help of Philly Stat, to figure out where are these properties, how do we go after all these LLCs that they're hiding behind? And that's punitive, right? That's where we're getting the big judgments and trying to collect on those judgments. So it's both, right? It's working with the community to get individuals in good faith into compliance, and then the bad landlords who are doing this over and over and over again and creating blight upon the properties. We do have metrics that we have been working on, and we will, across the board, be gathering more data on what we're doing, but overall, just ramping up our public nuisance work.
Thank you so much.
Councilmember, our client who was had his case dismissed for lack of evidence, we all know that when you're in the courtroom and your case is done, that you are free to leave. And our public defender told him that he could leave. Court staff then told the sheriff, who then told the client that ICE was waiting for him and he could not leave. A police officer then walked into the courtroom and escorted him while the officer speaks Spanish and the client may have needed translation services. I can tell you, we are all lawyers up here, that was a detention. He was not free to leave. He was escorted downstairs. Our attorney, because she had other matters before the court, did not go with him, and so no one saw a warrant. Regarding representation for children, yes, children are representing themselves without counsel in immigration court. We had a couple of recent examples in New York in the last month. You're not entitled to counsel unless your family can afford you immigration counsel. Our proposal would have a staff of 10 lawyers. Each lawyer could represent 25 to 30 detained clients, plus another 20 to 30 non-detained clients. It will not be enough at the pace at which we're seeing detention and removal. People are being removed without even appearing in court for any sort of process or due process. So the best we can do right now is just tell our clients to be prepared at any time, because they can be detained in a courtroom, outside the courthouse, on their way to court, at work. We're seeing this happen in places that were previously deemed safe and welcoming spaces. But the moment is here, and I just wanted to, again, ask the council to approve this funding, but also implore the administration to release the funding to us so we can start this work immediately.
Thank you.
Councilmember, thank you. Uh-oh. Sabotaged again. Here we go. Councilmember, thank you. I do want to just briefly comment on immigration, then I'll go right to your questions about diversion and diversionary programs. I think it's very important for all of you to know that when we were doing a press conference yesterday about people who are international arms smugglers, who are sending weapons to not only to other states, but sending them to the Dominican Republic, various different ways, I found this out. There's a co-defendant, a co-conspirator, I should say, very actively involved in that plot to do these things. ICE grabbed him. ICE took him away. Why is that a bad thing? Because we had not finished prosecuting him. We had not gotten him to a courtroom. We had not gotten him to a conviction. We had not gotten him to a sentence. This is exactly the kind of undocumented person who is a danger in the United States, and Donald Trump kissed him. That's what he did. They are terrorizing victims of crime who are undocumented. They are terrorizing witnesses to crimes who are undocumented, who we need to prove cases, and they are kissing that very small segment of an undocumented population who do terrible crimes by deporting them before they even have their day in court. It is the most upside-down, anti-public safety nonsense that I've ever seen, and this is not the first time we have seen it. They are out to crush hardworking, fundamentally law-abiding, undocumented people who are just trying to make a living and raise their kids on simple stuff, like a first DUI, something like that. They're out to crush them. Or women who are complaining about being in a domestically abusive environment, and they are trying to vindicate their own rights. They're crushing them. But they are kissing that small segment of an undocumented population that is less likely to commit crimes as a total population, nonetheless includes a few real bad actors. They're kissing them. It is the most upside-down world I have seen, and frankly, this is part of why I hope the city will stand on its rights under the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, what is known as the commandeering doctrine. That doctrine says the president cannot tell the police commissioner what to do. The president cannot tell the district attorney what to do. The president cannot tell the mayor what to do. There is a separation of powers that is enshrined in the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And as Solicitor Garcia indicated previously, this city has fought against these efforts to punish cities that are diverse in a way this president doesn't like, punish cities that are democratic in a way this president doesn't like, and the city fought successfully in the courts. So I understand it may feel overwhelming to be in a position where you have a wannabe dictator, that's exactly what he is, who is threatening left and right and writing crazy on pieces of paper. But we need to stand on those rights, and we need to stand together in defending this city from these selective, vindictive assaults that are going to make us less safe. And frankly, I suspect he wants to make us less safe. There's a longer play here. I could get into it, but I think you all know what it is. If the cities that are doing well with lowering crime go in the other direction, then what does that justify? And what is his long-term goal? Having said that, I know that your question was a little on a different topic, and that question was what's going on with funding in terms of diversion. So we do not have a specific ask in our budget for a change of funding that is used for diversion, and there is a reason why it's a little hard to answer your question. Not that I don't want to answer it, but it's a little hard. So for example, AMP, the numbers of people in the Accelerated Misdemeanor Program, diversionary program, a program I support very much, those numbers shrunk a lot in the last few years because of the rise of police diversion through the PAD program, Police Assisted Diversion. Simply put, they didn't come into the system in the first place, and honestly, the notion is a good one. It's one that's worked in other places. I'm not saying it's working perfectly or well or whatever here, but the notion is not a bad one. So how do we compare that? We don't have lawyers whose only job is to do diversion with few exceptions. We have lawyers who go into courtrooms and they got 10 cases on the list that are not diversion, and they got 2 cases on the list that are diversion in juvenile court, among young adults, in other spaces. A lot of the diversionary programs that exist out there, we do not fund. Or if they are funded, they're funded from the outside through grants and things of that sort. So it becomes a little difficult, and once again, perhaps we could sit down with your staff and try to go over in more detail some of these specifics. It becomes a little difficult to say what portion of a particular attorney's time was dedicated to diversion, what portion was dedicated to going for a first-degree verdict in a homicide case. In that kind of a way. But this is certainly true, and I think this is a fair observation. We have very substantially increased diversion opportunities, especially in juvenile court, especially among young adults. We initiated a program that never existed, which was known as the Emerging Adult Unit. It specifically goes after people between ages 18 and 25 with special programming. Some of those people plead guilty. Same thing with our mental health court. Some of those people plead guilty, and then they receive special programming to address their needs. Some of those people are diverted. It all depends on the specifics of the case. But what I'm saying is diversion is happening in a variety of different ways, a lot of it grant funded, but most of the money that is in our budget is simply compensation for the attorneys, and in some cases social workers, who are doing work that connects to this.
Thank you for that. I think that, as it relates to diversion programs, I'm all about giving people opportunities, right? The right opportunities to be able to get them on the right path. And you and I have had this conversation about sitting down and looking at the diversion programs that run out of your office and other diversion programs throughout the city to figure out which ones of them actually are working and which are not, and how do we redirect the dollars from those diversion programs that are not working into better use. And so we haven't had the opportunity to sit down and have that, or to further that conversation, but I want to get it on the record to make sure that we look at all of these diversion programs. Some of them overlap. Some of them are serving the same people. And so what is the real impact that we're having in the community, and how are these individuals who are being referred into diversion, how are they taking advantage or not of these programs, and do we need to look at something different? So thank you for that.
I hear that, and I just want you to know, council member, I salute the idea of mapping it all out and seeing what is duplicative and comparing these diversion programs. But I think it's also very important we look at the outcomes with diversion and compare them to what used to happen, which is most of those cases were not diverted. We have, for example, done that with a diversion program that might seem controversial to some for people who are not criminals but are illegally in possession of guns. And what we saw when we looked at what happens when they're convicted as compared to when they're diverted is that we reduce recidivism by 3 out of 4. In other words, we cut recidivism by 75%. That is a tribute to carefully selecting who's in the program, to the fact that there are wraparound services and caseworkers working with small cohorts of people over a long period of time with judicial supervision, right? That has also been basically grant funded as well. So I totally agree with you that it's good for us to map it out, look for efficiencies, look for ways we can consolidate, but we should always be comparing diversion, not just to other diversion, but also to what would happen if we went ahead and got convictions in those cases. Does it make us safer? Ultimately, it's not about do we feel kind-hearted. It's about are we safer? And if the diversion is making us safer, and I do believe that our expansive view of diversion in Philadelphia is part of this much larger picture of improvements, then that's what we should do for the public.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady. Council Lady Landau, and then Councilman O'Rourke, and then Councilman Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you to all three of you being here. You are the highest law enforcement officials on every level that we have in the city of Philadelphia, and it's essential not only that you work together, but that you work with all of us and that you work with community, and I appreciate so much your ability to do all three of those, so thank you. I want to start by underscoring some of the things I've already heard today. First of all, you are the three-legged stool that must have all three legs strong, and if we don't have all three legs strong, the stool will topple over. And I believe because of that, it is essential that we fund the Defenders Association to a higher capacity so that it can be as strong as the other legs. As somebody who's been a legal aid lawyer, I know what it's like to be in the batting cage, to be there with overwhelming number of cases and the weight of the world on you, as all of your attorneys and all of your units feel. It is, it's very burdensome, and it's wonderful. And it is the moment, we know that everybody who works for all three of your units are doing it for service, for community, and to make a better Philadelphia in all the ways that we've heard today. But considering that the Defender Association has to pay for its rent, its health care, it's SEPTA, and if you could be offered a pension, it would be nice. It makes it so inequitable that it's unfair. I must admit, I did not know until taking this role that you had to pay for your rent and your utilities, right? Rent, utilities, and health care, while the other entities do not. And that, to me, is such an inequity. We should actually just start there. If we could alleviate that burden from you, then you'd be freed up to spend some of that money in other areas where as the expert in the Defender Association, where you had to pay it. So even if we just start with rent, utilities, and healthcare, I am all in on making sure that we make this equitable.
Point of information, Councilwoman Landau. Madam Defender, what's the price tag on that, roughly?
So our operating costs are $2.5 million for this budget year, out of the $15 million.
For what Councilwoman Landau was speaking on regarding,
So our annual,
it was rent, health care, and what else was it?
The 2.5 is the ask for the increase.
and I was
You have to come to the microphone.
Yeah.
Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you, City Council. I'm Carolyn Jester. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Defender Association. So our budget for the year for those types of expenses, our operating expenses, is about $9 million, not counting benefits. Our benefits are another $15 million. And our ask this year is $2.5 million. It's just for the increase that we're expecting and the increase that we had last year that we were not funded for. So we have, normally these kinds of increases are addressed at mid-year transfer ordinance.
So these increases, are they like salary increases or cost of living?
No, this is benefits and
benefit increases.
operating expenses.
Okay.
We have our rent increases every year. We have common area maintenance charges that are imposed on us by our landlord. We pay the city of Philadelphia property taxes. So you give us money that we give back to you. We pay our electric bill. We pay all our telecommunications. We fund all of our IT, backup systems, network, switches, everyone's laptops, everyone's computers, all the phones, internet, so forth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you do all that when it's a constitutional mandate that you, and thankfully you do it so well, of defending and representing those who have been charged with crimes, and make sure that you do so in a way that is socially and equitably just, and in collaboration with the other legs on the stool. I also want to just take this first round to weigh in on PIFUP as well. I too do not have any idea why we are talking about having to hire somebody who might be new to the city of Philadelphia or new to a role even working for government to decide where we should put the money for PIFUP, for immigration defense, when all of the immigration organizations have come together and said, please put this with the Defender Association. We are asking you to put it with the Defender Association. We need a headquarters that is strong and fully equipped to handle this. So my question for you is, if we can give you the extra $1.5 million for PIFUP, which I am strongly in favor of as well, along with the money that had previously been put to HIAS and NSC, how many attorneys would that hire? How many support staff? And are these new roles that you would hire for? And if not, when can you get started? And if we could tell you today that you are going to be the recipient of these funds, when could you get started, and what would you need to make this happen?
The proposal, if we only got the 1.5 million, we would be able to have a staff of 13. 10 would be attorneys. We would also want to hire someone in an administrative capacity. We'd also want to hire a mitigation specialist because, of course, we want to be able to do a lot of work to humanize our clients before the court. A lot of our clients are here because of fear. They left their country because they did not feel safe and they cannot and do not want to return. Many of them have no family ties in their home country, so our mitigation specialists would do a lot of that work. I would have to post and hire, but I could be up and running in a month.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'll save my minutes.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman O'Rourke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all of you, the three-legged stool, as my colleague called you, for the defense and the legal expertise that you provide our little domicile. Good morning, Madam Solicitor. Good to see you again. I was going to ask a few questions around what the Council President already kicked off, considering we are under new management and a new mayor, how we were going to grapple with Trump 2.0 compared to 1.0, but I think it's kind of been covered a bit. So I'll jump to something else. Neighborhood Wellness Court raised some serious constitutional as well as operational concerns, including from the judiciary itself at this point. The program has been paused, postponed, and publicly criticized by the very judges that are meant to actually oversee it. From my understanding, the program is currently paused based on those concerns. Here are a few questions that I want to get on the record. Has the city at this point prepared the manual that Judge Simmons requested in order to resume the court operations this week? And if so, will you submit it to the chair for our review?
I understand that the document has been submitted and reviewed by the courts, and that but we can share that with council.
Okay. This is actually for the solicitor.
Oh.
Yes, no problem.
That would be a question for Director Gear as to the manual of this, but the defender said it's been submitted, so there you go.
The administration has claimed that the program meets constitutional standards. Can you speak to what specific legal thresholds that you're relying on to make that particular claim? What legal analysis gives you confidence that this model is constitutionally sound? And I'm thinking in this point right now because we heard reports that residents were nodding off, otherwise not coherent, drifting in certain spaces, which I understand to be the constitutional basis for competency. So can you speak to that?
It is true that my office has consulted with the Public Safety Office all along the way on all manner of legal issues, including constitutional issues. I will not waive that privilege here, but I can follow up with your office in written or spoken format, but that analysis is not appropriate for the public since it was given in confidence to a client.
Duly noted. I actually would be interested in having that conversation if we have to have it off the record. So let's do that. Lastly, I have a law and how have law and OPS worked to help train police officers that are actually undertaking the very delicate work of bringing those folks in, since those officers are the actors with the ultimate choice to bring somebody to the wellness court in the first place?
The officers that are presenting in court?
Yes,
Is that what you're
for those
asking?
who are
The
actually doing.
specific court or well, we've trained all officers. From those who are working with Deputy Commissioner Rosario in the field in Kensington. Those are the officers who would be bringing people into wellness court, along with the medical providers, the police officers. We have been involved along the way in every single aspect, and a lot of that is explaining constitutional rights to the officers and those in court.
Okay. I heard the bell, but I want to ask really quickly to Defender Hudson. The administration has told us that we need to wait 6 months for enough data to evaluate wellness court. Your office has already gathered meaningful data, and more importantly, you've been on the ground representing many of your clients who are pulled into this pilot. So we'd like to better understand what you're seeing now. And here's my 3, and then I'll get off. First, as of today, how many people have been brought through wellness court? How many people have accepted diversion, and how many people have decided to have a same-day trial? And of those who have actually accepted diversion, how many of them successfully completed the treatment and are at the Wellness Village?
I'm going to call up Andrew Pappas, who's our Managing Director of Pretrial and has been the one staffing Wellness Court on the Wednesdays.
Thank you.
And good morning, Council. Andrew Pappas from the Defender Association, and thank you for your question.
Good morning, Mr. Pappas.
To date, there have been 72 unique arrests made for Neighborhood Wellness Court. Not all of those cases resulted in not all of those arrests resulted in a case being brought in Wellness Court. There have been 67 unique individuals who were arrested. Some were arrested multiple times, which is how you have 72 arrests, but 67 different individuals. As to the number of trials, there have been 8 individuals who rejected Wellness Court. 2 of them entered guilty pleas, 6 of them went to trial. Of the ones that went to trial, 4 were found guilty, 2 were found not guilty. There have been 4 cases to date that were marked as successful completions of Wellness Court. 1 was for a housing referral, 3 were for treatment. Of the 3 that were successful completions for treatment, 2 of those individuals made it to Riverview Wellness Village.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Thomas. Chair recognizes Councilmember Thomas.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you. I want to jump right in because we don't have much time. I want to start with our city solicitor. Good afternoon. First question. Why did you recommend to the mayor that we get rid of the $100,000 exemption for Burt as well as the $2,000 exemption on use of occupancy? What made you say that this is something that we should get rid of as far as the exemption?
I have been public about this as recently as last week in a press conference. The law has changed on uniformity, and it's getting more and more strict.
The law, the state law?
The state law on uniformity, correct. And there were a number of cases in the PA Supreme Court, so the highest court, since the law was passed in 2011, 2012. And it is very clear now that this program is very risky. And I'm talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in risk. And we are put on notice by the Zoll case. And if we continue this lawsuit and we lose, it could be hundreds of millions of dollars in judgments against the city.
So because this is a city council project and a city council-based initiative, as far as the creation of the legislation, did you or anybody on your team think to come to council and offer some type of legal representation for us. I'm thinking about when I went through driving equality and being sued there, and there was a lot of reluctance, and we worked with the Public Defender's Office on that specific initiative. But one of the things that happened was City Council had the option to be able to retain outside counsel. So based on my knowledge of both the exemption around BERT and use of occupancy, it's a City Council-based initiative. So did that conversation happen?
I cannot disclose to you in this open forum what conversations happen with council. But there's no legal conflict here between the mayor and council. The law is clear.
Do you think we should have our own counsel for this particular issue? Do you think we should have our own representation that gives us our interpretation on what direction we should go in around BERT and use of occupancy exemption? So if you represent us, you represent everybody. You are saying as our lawyers that we do not need our own separate counsel for this specific city council-based initiative.
I do not believe there is a legal conflict. I do
Now,
not
I'm not
believe there
asking
is
you,
a
or is there a
I
I want to be clear.
believe there is not clarity in the law. I believe that
So
this
as
is
our
a
lawyer,
risk.
you recommend that we do not need to retain our own counsel for this particular issue to advise us on what direction we should go in.
Correct.
Why would we not have our own counsel for this when we've been given that option when other city council-based initiatives have come under threat in the past?
The last time I remember having that was in self-injection sites. And then probably before that was the Nutter administration regarding the library.
We had outside legal counsel when we were sued around driving equality.
We were working together with that council.
We did. We worked in collaboration, but we still,
Right.
you guys still came to me and offered me the option to retain counsel. I think this is my concern. This decision was made without dialogue with city council.
That
It's
is
a
not the
city
case.
council project.
It's not the case. It's not the case, and we can talk offline, or the administration can talk offline.
I don't think that's best for the public to have a conversation offline. I think, again, I don't know. So let me just be clear. Over the last 3 years, I've been the person that have led the way around any legislation around the BERT tax. So basically, if you're saying that a conversation took place, you're saying that I just wasn't privy to that conversation. So you had the conversation without me. I'm not allowed to be a part of the dialogue. Is that what we're insinuating?
I know that there were conversations.
I'm gonna move on to the Public Defender's Office, and I'm gonna cue myself in the T for the second line of questioning, because I'm gonna go and talk to a couple other people and get clarity, because this is not the way I thought this line of questioning was gonna go, and it's unfortunate that you're taking a position that's like clearly very adversarial when I'm just trying to get questions answered on something that's gonna impact thousands of businesses across the city of Philadelphia, right? Like, we're not just talking about the BERT exemption. Have we done a calculation to recognize how use of occupancy is going to really hurt businesses? We talk about corridors and corridor development and developing businesses in neighborhoods across the city of Philadelphia. Is there a fiscal analysis that says what the $2,000 use of occupancy exemption being dissolved is going to do?
Yes, the revenue commissioner has all those numbers, and I'm truly not being adversarial. If we lose...
I'm just saying, we the ones who got to go back to these businesses.
I
right? Like, no one's
completely
going to
agree
vote
with you.
for the cities. You don't have a position that's voted on, right? And at the end of the day, we're the ones who are going to have to take the hit, and I'm at large. So I'm really thinking about the district council members. I'm going to move on to the Public Defender's Office. I'm going to come back with a different type of line of questioning. And D.A. Krasner, I want to say thank you to you, G. Lamar, your entire team, Chief Public Defender Hudson, Kate, the entire team, everybody who we work with. I want to say thank you very much. Just a quick question, and then I'm going to tee up for the second round of questioning, specifically around rent. And this is just like a curious thing. Why don't you just use a city building? Why are you renting a building that's not owned by the city of Philadelphia? Why can't we put ourselves in a position to be able to absorb your office in one of these city buildings? I think about Councilmember Young and some of the work that he's trying to do around center city buildings and center city spaces, and all we're hearing is office spaces are empty and no one's taking new leases. How come we haven't been able to rectify that issue?
We have been asking budget cycle after budget cycle about what supports we can get around rent, and we have tried to, at the minimum, get our real estate taxes waived. We explored that with Director DeBow, and he told us that he is not in a position, the city is not in a position to waive those property taxes, which last year was $330,000.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to definitely queue up for a second line of questioning because I'm very curious to know how dialogue happened with City Council, but I was excluded from the conversation. So thank you.
All right, so we'll look to hear from you in the second round. Councilwoman Ahmad.
Council Lady, Council Chair. I have a bunch of questions for all of you, so I guess I'll tee them up. First, for the public defender, thank you so much for what you do. And I just want to underscore that public defenders are essential in ensuring the constitutional right to counsel for those who cannot afford it, the Sixth Amendment. And in that light, I was just curious why you have a 501c3 that has a relationship with the city that allows them to disregard your needs. Is there a different structure that would obviate all of this, budgetary constraints you have?
Thank you, Councilmember. We are an independent, or what we call quasi-city agency. The first rule that the APA has 10 principles for effective public defense systems. That first rule is independence. We don't want to be a part of the city government because then we are advocating, right? We're advocating for our clients, and our first and only duty is to our clients. And there are times when that is going to be in conflict with with what the city interests or city priorities may be. So we have a board of directors, but 99% of our funding comes from the city of Philadelphia.
Is your structure different from the DA's office in terms of the relationship with the city?
The District Attorney's Office, the Law Department, Office of Public Safety are city agencies.
City agencies. So in order for you to be able to honor the Sixth Amendment, have we put in that frame that the work you do actually in the long run saves us money and follows the Constitution? And what has the response been when this is mandated in our Constitution? We have this, and yet we're not able to fund it so that people are getting appropriate representation.
This isn't just a Philadelphia issue. The state ranks 45th in the country in supporting public defense around the Commonwealth. I think when we look at supports of public defense, our clients are not popular, and what we see on the news and the narratives about them, right, and how they're portrayed. And so for example, I will say that for my colleagues, right, the ability to get grant and grant funding, things like the opioid settlement funding, again, funding that we do not get, right, because of who we represent. So that's why I come every budget cycle with high asks, because we have high needs. You just heard from the CFO, we have a $66 million budget. $9 million of it goes to operating costs, and another 15 to benefits. And I have 530 people. So you can imagine how much we spend on salary, which is upwards of $40 million.
You had mentioned something when we met, which really struck me, that the way you work with your clients so that they plead appropriately has much less appeals and costs us less. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Part of the $15 million asked was to expand homicide representation. We currently represent 20% of the people in Philadelphia charged with homicides. We would like to represent 40% and expand to 40% over 2 years, and that's a $3 million over 2-year ask. The Defender Association of Philadelphia, with the incredible work that District Attorney Krasner has done in his Conviction Integrity Unit, I believe we're up to 50 people? 45 people that have been released through the Conviction Integrity Unit. Not a single one of those people were represented by a public defender. I did death penalty representation for 10 years. There's not a single person on death row that was represented by a Philly defender. We are the best, and we should be doing more work, but because we spend time building relationships with our clients, should they decide to plead guilty, we have that relationship. We do effective representation. Our cases rarely come back for ineffective assistance of counsel or prosecutorial misconduct. misconduct or judicial misconduct, police misconduct, they don't come back. So it's for $3 million over 2-year ask to increase the representation would down the long road save the city tens of millions of dollars
There we
from
go.
wrongful conviction litigation.
All right, we're advocating for this. A quick question for the DA. Thank you, Public Defender. Question for the DA is the resources you allocate to organizations doing gun violence prevention work, is there any requirement, or at least are they in using cognitive behavioral therapy in any of these programming? And obviously there's been evidence across in Chicago and Maryland, and our own Philadelphia Osteopathic College just got awarded $750,000 to do CBT work. I just wondered how intentional we are about using CBT in our programming.
Thank you, Council Member. The good news is yes, we're very intentional. We've been doing it now for years. More specifically, just to give you, I think, the leading example, in our diversionary program intended for people who are illegally possessing guns but are not criminals or not gang affiliated, are operating more simply without having gotten the right paperwork or out of fear. In that, the way that works is intensively based upon cognitive behavioral therapy. We work with the Center for Carceral Studies at the University of Pennsylvania, and it is done under the guidance and supervision of University of Pennsylvania professor Dr. T.J. Ghosh. The work that they do involves cohorts of about 20 people. It involves caseworkers who very actively are trying to assist them with everything that's not correct in their lives at that point, and cognitive behavioral therapy, often done in a group session with mentoring among the people, is essential to it. We have found it to be extremely successful. As I mentioned earlier, if you look at a cohort of people who used to get convicted and compare them to the ones who are in this diversionary program now, the convicted crew will give you a rate of 4 arrests. The CBT, intensive social work crew, will give you a rate of 1 rearrest, okay? Anytime we can reduce rearrest by 75%, that is absolutely in the interest of public safety, and I think that is just one example of how cognitive behavioral therapy has shown its power to deal with some of these issues.
So yes, that's great to know. So all the organizations that you grant fund to, are they privy to this CBT training, or is that part of their programming, since clearly it would behoove us to make sure everybody has access to that?
Councilmember, I agree that more widespread access is a fabulous idea. We give micro grants to community-based organizations that do many, many different things. They're all carefully vetted by the Philadelphia Foundation. They get relatively small amounts of money, by which I mean amounts usually between $5,000 and $50,000. We view it as seed money for, innovative mom and pop, smaller community-based organizations. And, recently we gave, I think, $1.2 million. Please remember, we're not allowed to use any of this for our salaries, okay, which is basically the vast majority of our budget. And we're also not allowed to use it for a lot of fixed costs. It's money that by law must go back into the communities it came from in order to rebuild the harm that was done by criminal activity. So I don't want anybody to think we're depriving the taxpayer. Not only are we increasing public safety with this work, but in my opinion, we're aiding the taxpayer in myriad ways. But there are some of those organizations that use cognitive behavioral therapy. There are some of those organizations that use other tactics. I'll just lift one up at random. If you look at Icons, EYEKONZ, which is a sports organization that teaches inner city kids, especially started out with girls, but it's now also boys, lacrosse skills. This is a group that has not only succeeded in increasing capacity there, but they've put 80 of their kids through college on scholarships. as a consequence of what they've done, which is just amazing. You know, there are these heroes and sheroes all over the city doing incredible stuff, and they're doing it different ways. But I am with you in saying that all the research and all the science supports the intentional use of cognitive behavioral therapy to address many of the criminal justice issues we face.
We should think of a fund of some sort that others can use. But I'll go to the second round, but just a question for our city solicitor. You know, these bonds we're looking to float for our home initiative that the mayor is, proposing. Who are getting awarded these bonds? Are you involved in that process, or who exactly is overseeing the awarding of these massive floating of bonds, and which law firms are getting those, and how does that work?
The law department is involved. I will have to get you right up on that. I've been involved at a very high level with the solicitor's opinions and the legislation, but we can get you a more detailed. I wouldn't want to mutilate the response to that, but obviously the law department is involved, there's law firms involved, and obviously city planning and the mayor's office of housing.
Yeah, so if you could give that to the Council President, appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will reserve the rest of the comments for the second round.
Thank you, Council Lady. Next is Councilman Young, and following Councilman Young, Councilman Harity, would you be willing to yield your time for Councilwoman Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson, who hasn't had a chance yet? Okay, thank you. Okay, so Young and then Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This has been a very interesting conversation. I'm learning a lot. But I would want to put on the record, that, definitely supportive of the Public Defender's Office and what they do to our city, what they mean to our city. But we have to realize that they are a vendor, essentially, of the city. So those workers are not entitled to, a city pension, and I'm sure the other vendors that the city has will like us to pay their rent and things like that as well. But we have to keep those things in consideration as we're going through the budget process for our city. And one question I do have for the defender, and we're talking about parity, are your attorneys allowed to live outside the city?
They are allowed to live outside the city, and many do. Getting the SEPTA benefit would help remarkably, considering that comes out of their already incredibly low paychecks. But they do live outside the city. It's more affordable.
Thank you. And this question is for, and so you are, for the defenders as well, and the city or the state is constitutionally mandated to provide the service, but your Defender Association of Philadelphia technically is not itself constitutionally obligated to provide indigent defense in our city, because our city technically could contract that service out to Ballard Spar if we so decided to. And so in being a vendor of the city, how can we as a city, how can we help you improve some of the services that you're providing to us as a city? What are some of the things that we need to do in order to help you uplift your services that you provide to us?
It is correct that the city could contract with any entity at any price to fund a constitutionally required representation. We go through an RFP process every 5 years. We just went through our RFP this year. We were, since our founding in 1934, once again granted the opportunity to represent people in indigent defense in the city of Philadelphia. How we can improve our representation, I referenced earlier the importance of recruiting and retaining excellent lawyers who are going to carry this organization forward. Every one of my clients is a human being. Every one of my clients deserves representation no matter of what they're accused of doing. And any one of us in this body, should one of our family members come into the system, are going to want the best representation and the best advocate next to them. And the only difference between us and the clients who represent are the fact that they're poor and they can't afford one. But they're entitled to excellent, zealous representation.
Thank you. And one more question. Could you provide us with the demographics of the attorneys that are representing the clients here in Philadelphia?
I absolutely will. I will say on recruiting, as a generation, we are not so far removed from the current state of law graduates who are the first in their families to go to college and the first in their families to go to law school. It is really hard and has always been hard to recruit diverse, particularly black attorneys, because they are not coming here for $64,000 a year. And when they do come here, it's very hard to stay here when their salaries do not move, but I will absolutely get you those numbers.
I mean, I asked that because me being an attorney, have friends, I've heard a different perspective than that answer that you provided to us. And so if you could get us those demographics, I appreciate that.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson, and then Councilmember Bass.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Council President. And I also wanted to thank all of you for your work and for being here, and also thank Councilmember Harity for this time. I wanted to quickly start off with some thank yous for law for Solicitor Garcia, for Sam, your Chief of Staff, who has been stellar, Louis Rossman, our longtime friend in the Ledge Unit, Raynell Staley, who was excellent and came over with us in our last law and government hearing so we could get through those amendments after 3 hours of negotiations. Zoe in the Ledge Unit, Joanna Klein, Marta Sanchez, thank you for all your assistance with scheduling, and Amanda Stewart-House, who was at all of our nonprofit provider meetings. So I wanted to thank all of you. And then for our district attorney's office, obviously D.A. Krasner, we thank you for your work. And you know, I say this every single year, so you already know it's coming. G. Lamar Stewart, who we rely on to be a liaison between council and the DA's office.
Budget request, sir.
Right, right. So, you know, we're here for G. Lamar Stewart because he makes it happen.
Northwest. Rather Wilder and them.
And also for the Defenders Association, Chief Defender Hudson, I think you are doing a stellar job. I really do. And you are really representing our most vulnerable residents, and especially our youth, and to Kate Parker for all of her help and her work. So I wanted to get the thank yous on the record. For the law department in particular, I wanted to ask a question relative to nuisance businesses and also some of the code enforcement cases that we have for properties, like actual residential properties. Recently, we've been talking a lot, as we always have, about these nuisance businesses, and you know that Councilmember Bass and Councilmember Phillips and I have all done legislation on this matter. We're working together with Councilmember Bass's office on this issue now. And I wanted to, you know, for the record, if you all could just explain why you can't confiscate the drug paraphernalia when the CVNs are issued, you know, for violations. And in addition to that, when we had one of our hearings a few weeks ago, and I thank all of my colleagues for being there, it was brought up several times that the IRS will move penalties from one LLC to another LLC so that these businesses don't skirt their responsibility. Are you familiar with this process, and is it something that we could use here in Philadelphia to stop the nuisance businesses that we're dealing with from avoiding justice around the illegal sale of drug paraphernalia? I'll start there, and I just have a couple more.
Thank you, Majority Leader, and thank you for your gratitude for all of the members of the Law Department working hard over the last year. I'll start with the second question first on nuisance businesses. I'm not sure if you were in the room when I was responding to Councilmember Lozada, but there are ways to sort of pierce the veil, right, is what we call it. And yes, we are doing that. And what we are doing is very rigorously tracking these LLCs from person to person to person to person to person because they set up all this. It's a shell game with them, right? It is a shell game.
Right.
And so we are doing that, including with information that Philly Stat is getting.
Okay.
So we're aggregating all this data that LNI has, that the Revenue Department has, that, anyway, the different, the Commerce Department, right? Everybody has little pieces of these LLCs, and we are putting it together, and we are sort of piercing the veil to go back to that sort of core owner or owners. So we are actively doing
Okay.
that.
I hear the bell, I want to honor the clock, but as a secondary question, as an example, I know when we did one drug paraphernalia tour, there was one owner with a number of businesses, but it was only one business that was shut down. In that instance, what do you do?
Yeah, so yes, it is. And they do have due process, right? And so we do have to make sure that we can stand up those cases and educate the court as to why we are tracing back the trail of ownership. But that is a high priority for us, and the money that we are getting for the code team will help us. We're hoping to get an investigator to help do that too and do that tracing back.
Okay, and then I also, I had a question regarding the BERT tax exemption that I'll hold and I'll save.
Okay.
But I wanted to also ask a question relative to, and I know this question has come up for a million years. I remember being a legislative aide here, and I remember former Councilman Blackwell used to even ask this question all the time, relative to legal representation for council and also for the administration, seeking to, and you know, we always do get outside counsel, and we can get outside counsel if we need to. But there are some instances where there are matters where we know that one party may feel strongly about the matter, and there may be some disagreement, right? And so in those instances, how do we, I don't even know what way we make that process fair for everyone, not just for council, but also for the administration, because I think it does become a conflict wherein we know, as an example, if there's something the administration wants to do or strongly believes in, and even if, you know, I'm just going to give the example. The charter change passed regarding workforce development. We received the opinion from your office. It basically stated that even though the charter change passed, you all don't have to follow it. And so my concern is not around that specific issue because any longer, because I've spoken with the administration, we've met, we have agreement around that part of the workforce development situation with Commerce. And so, and I'm continuing to meet with them. So it's not specifically about that particular issue anymore. My concern is as the chair of the Law and Government Committee, where all of our charter changes must be approved before they go on the ballot. My concern is that at what point do voters believe that their votes didn't matter? Because even though it was a charter change and it was approved by the voters, now the administration has stated they are not following that. And your office, which represents both of us, is saying that they are correct, and we have no sort of like due process in that. And it's no knock at all. This is really a procedural question. This is not an issue question because we've worked out the issue, and I'm very appreciative of what the administration has done in this process. They've been working with us in good faith. So this is not a knock to the issue, it's a procedural question.
Right. You're right. This is a question that goes back ages. And it does. And the way the charter is set up, the solicitor's office provides the legal opinion for the entire city. So that everybody who does business with the city, everybody, the courts, right, everybody who's internal knows that it is the solicitor's opinion that will be presented in court along the way.
Okay.
So yes, you can get another legal opinion, but I am telling you what the city will present if we go to court on this issue.
I understand. So I understand what you're saying. You're saying if the city goes to court, then the solicitor's legal opinion is what would stand up in court as it relates to the city's position,
Correct.
Even though we may have had a difference of opinion in council. So I guess the question would be then how do we solve for that? How do we, and I know I'm not an attorney, which is why I'm asking this.
Excuse me, Majority Leader, I have a point of information.
Okay.
Councilmember Jeffrey J. Young, Esquire.
Thank you, and Madam Leader, I think I have an answer to that question, and that would be that council needs its own solicitor's office, which is something that I've been advocating for since I was a staffer on city council.
Okay.
We need our own solicitors to issue, to fight for us in court.
Well, I think for additional point of information for the record, first, I think my chief legal counsel said we can't have two solicitors at one time.
You could change the charter. That could happen. I'm telling you, in other jurisdictions, it turns out to be a disaster.
Did the chair recognize Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson?
Right, but this is my concern, right? So say you do a charter change. We're back at where we are now. So I'm just asking for a procedural, operational understanding. How do we solve for this challenge? Because again, I don't want it to be a situation where now all these folks have voted in favor of this said initiative, and it wasn't my bill. I introduced it on behalf of another member who's no longer in this body. And I just don't know how we solve for that. Like, how do we solve for an issue like that, recognizing that other parts of the charter do state the administrative authority and powers of the administration, but when that is in conflict with the intent of the legislation and the question that hundreds of thousands of people voted in favor of having.
And my response is that keep doing what you're doing. You know, come to the law department before anything is introduced and passed, and you will know the law department's position on whether it is legally enforceable, whether there's a preemption issue, whether there is separation of powers issue. Those are the two main things, and you will be on notice, and we can help fix whatever it is before it goes up.
So, but here was the issue with this. This happened under a previous administration. And so it was prior to this administration that the legislation was passed. And so now that there's been a change in administration and a change in the organizational structure of the staffing complement within the administrative department, now the opinion has been requested when there was no issue prior to this time. So it's one of those circumstances where I came right to you all because I just think that that's the right thing to do.
Right.
Because I always want to protect us and protect ourselves from, any litigation. And just as a former legislative aide of 5 years, I know to do that.
Yes.
But again, in this instance, I don't know how we solve for that challenge, because say we do a charter change, and then I don't have to follow that.
Well, and that's not a question of the law changing. We can tell you, you could ask, could future mayors ignore this? And we could say yes, because this is an executive prerogative, right? So, I wasn't there when these conversations were taking place.
Yeah. Say that
Right?
again.
There is a separation of powers, and we can warn of that up front, right? So you
Okay.
have a different mayor. The law doesn't change, and I don't make up the law, right? We interpret the law to the best of our ability, and again, that is the opinion of the city should it be challenged in court.
Okay, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the time, Council President. I just wanted to get that on the record because as the chair of the Law and Government Committee, I don't want folks to think that I didn't do my due diligence.
Of course, yes.
As the chair of the committee and as the, chair that ensures that we're getting the ballot questions on. I work with the Commissioner's Office on the plain language statements with the Law Department, with you all. So I just want to make sure that I am doing my job to the very best of my ability, and wanted to ensure we had clarification on that issue. And I want to say again for the record, because I know they're listening, that I appreciate this administration for the opportunity to meet and work together. This was a bill that was introduced under the last administration that we're just getting an updated opinion regarding under this administration.
Understood. And your office is always a great partner, and I'm happy to talk about this further.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just had a couple questions, and I want to follow up somewhat on Councilwoman, our Majority Leader's line of questioning. And you know, I had never heard the term of executive prerogative, which suggests to me that the executive office really is who the solicitor works for.
No, I would say council also has prerogative, right? We can give you all the advice in the world and you can pass what you want. So there's a separation of powers, and both the legislative branch and the executive branch have their own powers by design.
Listen, I know the way it's supposed to be set up and the way it's supposed to happen, but I'm saying that from your own words, the term executive prerogative would determine if there could be two solicitors in this administration or in future administrations. It's a bit, you know, it's a bit troubling to me.
No, I maybe you misunderstood.
Maybe.
The charter is what says that there's one solicitor.
No, I understand that, yes, but we're talking about if there was a change, so that there could be representation strictly for Philadelphia City Council, you're saying that it could be ignored by future mayors, by...
No, not if there was a charter change.
Or by...
No, that is not what I was saying.
You're saying not if there was a charter change?
Not if there's a charter change.
Right, okay. Okay, all right. Let me ask you a question then about this thing we call due process, which in many ways, in my opinion, is a bit of a double-edged sword, especially right about now, because we want to make sure that, you know, when it comes to individual rights, that people receive due process. When it comes to the operation of businesses in our communities that are flouting our laws, that are doing whatever they want to do, that are operating without licenses, without any sort of permits, you know, basically doing whatever they want to do, we continue to come back to L&I and different departments, the health department. We can't do anything about nuisance businesses because these businesses are afforded due process, and it feels as if it's over the rights of the community, the people who are most negatively or adversely impacted in the neighborhood. And so I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Sure. I don't know that we'd have to talk further about the perception or the reality. I'm not sure that there's a favoring of business rights over individual rights.
What's a reality? In my opinion, it's very much a reality. Anytime you can walk into a establishment that has no operating permit, no operating licenses, no tobacco license, they're selling tobacco products, they're selling fake cigarettes, there's no, the signage is illegal, they're operating down the street from a school, which is illegal for the type of products that they sell. I mean, pretty much everything that they're doing is illegal, and yet they opened up earlier this year and they're still open. They were closed for maybe 24 hours, but they're still open. And so when we've asked, and we just asked the other day, the Department of Licenses and Inspections, we asked the Health Department, and what we keep running up against is that they are afforded due process to be able to get their stuff together.
Yes.
Now, I don't understand how it is that if I put my trash out early, I don't get due process, I get a ticket. If my grass grows too high, I don't get due process, you know, I don't get a warning, I don't get time to get it together. I get a ticket saying you have to pay, you know, judge and jury, you know, you are fine. If there's construction done on a building that's, you know, of concern and L&I comes across the site, then it's an immediate work stoppage, cease work order. So I don't understand how these, you know, what is the line that is drawn that says that certain businesses get a pass? They get time to get themselves together. And it feels as if for the rest of us, you know, there is no, you know, grace or time or warnings given. You get the actual violation, which is, you know, due in like 10 or 15 days or whatever. And then it escalates, and then you have, you know, additional fees and, you know, interest and penalties and all those kinds of things. So.
Sure, let me try to tackle that in a couple different ways. So if you get a ticket for putting out your trash, your due process is that you have the ability to challenge that ticket.
Well, I'm not saying, no, well, let's say that I did put my trash out early. So, yeah, guilty, right? But at the same time, they put out, if they're going into a business and don't have a license to this day.
Right.
They're guilty, right?
So
why do they get time to get their license or not and continue to operate? Shouldn't they have to close down while they're getting their license and all of their other, use and occupancy, fees and taxes that they have to pay? They don't have any of the licenses that they are required to have. They don't have any of the permits that were required when the construction was done. They have multiple violations as they're operating now, plumbing code violations and electrical code violations. And, I'm harping on this same one over and over again because it's just so egregious. But I could duplicate this by 30.
So the due process is built into the code, right? So it depends on the violation, but there are violations where you get sort of a CVN, right, or 3 notices, and then you get your commercial activity license pulled after a hearing. That is all built into the code.
But if you don't have a commercial activity license?
Well, it depends on what the penalty is, right? There are code violations for which that require a hearing. It requires Board of L&I review or ZBA review or whatever it is. That is all built into the code. I do think license and inspections, and I believe they testified to this, will be ramping up so that they are hitting more CVNs right off the bat and not giving people time. But if you are looking to close a business or take away a license, that is a constitutional issue and does require due process. Now, there are certain circumstances where the business is imminently dangerous that we can shut down before that initial hearing, right? We can go in on an emergency motion without the full hearing and shutting it down in part.
What determines if a business is dangerous and should be shut down?
It's a hearing. It's a hearing where we go, the law department would go, and there would be an inspection, and we'd have someone from L&I come to testify as to whether that business was imminently dangerous. And this is all governed by statutory and then the common law as to what has determined in other cases to be imminently dangerous.
You know what, I understand what you're saying, but I think that there's a disconnect. And I think that the disconnect is between a lot of our communities and what's happening and how these businesses are operating and the people that we have who are responsible for ruling on whether these businesses should be open or closed. There's a real disconnect. Because there's no way that this business will be open if they stepped across the street on Cheltenham Avenue in Montgomery County or, Delaware County or Bucks County. Like, there is no way. And for some reason, this notion of due process for a business that is operating in a manner that is detrimental to the community, to the taxpayers, listen, it's questionable as to if these folks even have a tax account in which they're paying their fair share of taxes. So, I'll continue to beat this dead horse until we get some resolution on it. But we are not, our communities are not being serviced legally the way that they should be. Because if someone operates in a way that works against the community, they should be shut down immediately. Everybody knows it. I've been talking about it. This is not a secret. And this needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and I understand. And I don't know if you were in the room, I can't remember when people are coming out, that we handled 2,700 cases in court last year, and it's not enough, and we're not going fast enough through our boards too. So we are ramping up as much as we can, as quickly as we can. But if any of you have a business in your jurisdiction that you believe is not being inspected or is not being penalized like they should.
I'm gonna give you a list. I got a list.
Send me the list.
Yeah, I'll give you a list. It's disturbing that we
Thank you,
continue to
Bass.
have the same conversation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Member Bass, and provide the list. I know you will. Thank you. Point of information.
Dude, I just briefly say in 10 seconds, I concur with Member Bass. I think this is very unfortunate that if everyone in the law department, everyone in public health, everyone at L&I lived in these neighborhoods and had to listen to people deal with this every day, they're not going to be talking about the due process. They would say, you know what, shut them down, and they can take us up in court later on and try to prove their point. There should be a zero tolerance when it comes to certain things in our city, and I think that's the due process. The due process, they have the right to appeal, but for us to internally have these policies that keep giving these people opportunity after opportunity, when we don't even have the human resources in the city of Philadelphia to constantly keep checking back to see if they're doing the right thing, it's just a waste of our time. It's wrong and it's archaic and it needs to be fixed. And I think it's just unfair that we keep circling every year around this. And I just hope that we can become more innovative with our law department, public health, and L&I around this.
I do understand that. We do have department members that live in all neighborhoods throughout the city. But the law is the law, and if we want to change the law, we can talk about changing the law. But what I'm not going to say is, forget the law, we're just going to shut them down. That's not what we're going to do. That is not the reputation of the law department. The judges will not take kindly to that, and everything will get reversed. We believe in the law. If we want to change the law, that's a different conversation than just saying ignore the law.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity. We're official in our second round. And be brief in your response and direct. Councilmember Bass, would you like to be acknowledged? Councilmember Cindy Bass.
I would just, I apologize, but I just, just the sort of like the tone and the response, and I know you, and I'm, maybe it just came out a little bit, aggressively, but, we're not asking you to not follow the law. What we're saying is we need help. These neighborhoods need help. And we're asking for help. We've been asking for help over and over and over again. And we get these same kinds of responses, which is just like, well, this is what it is, deal with it. Like, no, we're here asking you for help. We need your help, we need your buy-in, and we need for you to help us figure out what to do. You're the chief legal strategist for the city of Philadelphia. We need your help.
And we are here to help you.
It doesn't feel like it.
I'm telling you, we handled 2,700 cases in court last year, and I'm telling you it's
none
not
of them
enough.
were in the 8th District with these nuisance businesses. I'm glad, thank you for your service, but none of the work that you did had any impact on businesses which have a huge impact on the larger community. People in those neighborhoods really feel stuck. And a lot of them, beyond selling these products that they shouldn't be selling in the first place, but then they attract other people who are selling additional products that are illegal. So we need your help, is what I'm saying.
We are here to help, and I'm sorry if I'm coming across as defensive, but we are working very, very hard.
We're all working hard. There's
I
not
agree
one
with you.
person on this floor who doesn't work from the time that they get up to the time that they go to bed. We work days, nights, weekends, holidays, summer, winter, fall. We work. That's what we do. That's the gig. And it's okay. I think you work too. I'm not saying that you're not working. I'm saying we need help. We need your help. Please help us. Please help us come up with a remedy to address these nuisance businesses. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity.
Thank you, Council President. I'm not even going to get on that with the nuisance business where I live. I'm going to stick to my questions. I got two more left here. One for the law department. What is the law department's role in mitigating the issues faced by the Kensington Wellness Court? And then for the district attorney's office, how does your office determine who to refer to wellness court? Yada, yada, yada. The city is making a big investment in this program, and would like to know how they determine who goes through AMP or who goes through PAD. How do your district attorneys go about that process of how one is just perceived PAD or AMP? Just trying to figure out you know what I mean, the differences between the groups and the fact of are you going to be using AMP as well as PAD in the wellness ecosystem?
I'll take wellness very quickly and I'll pass it to the DA. As I said before, we have been advising Office of Public Safety all along the way with wellness courts. We will continue to do that. I have personally been in a lot of meetings involving people in this room and will continue to be. We are riding along to do whatever is necessary and whatever advising is necessary to get the court on track.
Councilmember, thank you for the question. So just a partial mechanical answer, and then I'll try to speak a little more broadly. We are involved in referrals to AMP. AMP, of course, has existed for more than a decade, and it involves people who are already arrested and in the system. We are not involved with referrals to PAD. Those determinations are made entirely by the Philadelphia Police Department. We don't even see those cases because there's never an arrest in those cases. And I don't say that to demean or minimize the good work that can be done through a PAD-type program that's done the right way. There certainly are national examples of places where it's been a good idea. PAD in Philly is modeled in many ways, among other programs, on the LEAD model in Seattle, which has done remarkably good work in terms of dealing with people who are unhoused, living on the street with addiction, often with mental health issues as well. When we talk about wellness court, the cases that are getting to wellness court are getting there through the Philadelphia Police Department. They're not getting there through us. Right. As you know, there's sort of a, how shall I put it, there's a gathering of people that occurs often in the morning before wellness court, and then those people are brought into the system. So those are not referrals we make. And once again, I'm not criticizing anybody, I'm just trying to say mechanically that's how that works. The part of what is going on with the discussion around wellness court is that wellness court is evolving. It has been evolving from the beginning. And some of what's going on now is an effort to include more information from entities that have knowledge and expertise in the field that would like to see a wellness court type solution or a public health solution work. The courts have things to say about courts. Public Defender's Office has things to say about proper criminal defense and about the position of their clients, many of whom get picked up. The District Attorney's Office has a whole lot to say about what our best practices in relation to this. So, in my mind, we all share the value of wanting a proactive approach to what's occurring in Kensington, Port Richmond, and other areas that have a high level of people living on the street suffering from addiction, and that also have a high level of homeowners who have suffered for decades under the certain conditions. We all want this to succeed. The discussions that are going on are simply about whether or not the final result, the evolving wellness court, is going to be effective, successful in ways that, frankly, no other program has been in Kensington for decades. Whether it's going to succeed, I think all of us would agree that it's not enough to say we tried. It's enough if we are effective and we are alleviating problems for the residents, but also for those who are suffering from the disease of addiction.
Yeah, all I was trying to get at was the fact, I thank you for clearing that up too. That would made it very simple, I think. So PAD is the police before anybody has been charged or anything, and the AMP is after somebody actually has been charged, they're allowed to.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's the discrimination, the difference between the two of them. I appreciate that. And you are saying that you will continue to use both as on a per person basis, is what you're saying. It goes by a per client, I guess, basis of what they would get. If the police, you don't even see the PAD people.
Correct.
You only see the AMP people, is that correct?
We do not see the PAD people because, almost all of our cases originate with an arrest by police and the presentation of documentation. If there is no arrest, we don't even know the names of the people who go into PAD, much less what happens to them. I don't say that to criticize.
No, I get
there's much to be said for a multi-layered approach to diversion. But, and I also don't see it as within my purview to criticize the police commissioner on the decisions that are made internally with reference to them. But when it comes to AMP, that is in our bailiwick, that's in our ballpark. And yes, we like AMP. We want AMP to continue to do the good work. We want to see it evolve. We want to see it grow in ways that will make it more effective, along with a variety of other diversionary type programs.
All right. All right. Yeah, that's.
The time is up,
That's
Mr.
good for
Harity.
me. Yes, I did hear the bell. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. I'm just condensing because we're going to be wrapping up at 1:30. So just want people to be direct and direct responses, please. Councilman Rulandow, then Councilmember O'Rourke, Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you. I'll stay on the same line of questioning for a second. Chief Defender, I believe you said last year you made 740 referrals to mental health and substance abuse. No.
1,740.
1,700. I missed a digit. Sorry. Thank you. Are you referring people to the same entities that the city is using for their 30, 60, and 90 treatment centers people are going to before they go to the wellness center?
My understanding is where we refer our clients to a number of places for inpatient and outpatient treatment. I have an understanding that once clients are finished their 30, 60, 90, then there are no supports that I'm aware of in terms of where they go then. There are people at the wellness center. Only 2 of the people at the wellness center currently have gone through wellness score to get there. The others who are residing there, I don't have any visibility as to how they got there, whether it was a 30, 60, 90, did they complete treatment? Are they there in some sort of rehabilitation? What services are they connected to? So that we're not seeing that population.
Are you referring to the same service providers that the city is sending to?
We do.
The same companies?
We do.
Nonprofits, okay. And I got more. I wanted to ask, switching over to
Real brief.
okay,
Councilmember Rulandow.
issue that Majority Leader Gilmore Richardson championed and that I helped to work on too, that I want to thank the city for focusing on contract conformance and tackling that issue because it was affecting so many nonprofits. And I was so happy to be appointed to the nonprofit task force to play a role in that. We know that you've removed a large amount of the backlog on the contracts. What specific steps has the law department taken to streamline contract conformance and payment of invoices to nonprofit vendors who partner with the city?
So one thing we're doing is shoring up the different templates for different kinds of contracts. So there's 2 ways that contracts could be drafted, is one by agency draft and one by law department draft, and then an agency draft then comes to the law department. What I would like to move eventually, and we're getting 2 more people to do that, is move to more law draft, right? So that but one thing we can do now is shore up templates so that we are not reinventing the wheel all the time. There are certain negotiations that take forever, right? And I think there's also needs to be, and this has come through the task force, but an education for the nonprofits on how to have their paperwork together so that makes it quicker also. So we are doing that. We are streamlining within, but we are doing an awful lot of client counseling within the different agencies. We have a new procurement commissioner who I'm very excited about. He gets what's going on, and we are meeting with him on the regular to try to see if we, right now what we have is a system built in 1980 for 2025, and we are trying to figure out what's a system limitation, what's a code limitation, what's an agency limitation, and we will be continuing to work with council on this. There are a lot of fixes that need to happen, and we are in the middle of all of it.
Thank you. I have a few additional questions, but I'll put them in writing, okay?
All right. Thank you very much, Councilman Rulandow. Councilmember O'Rourke and Dr. Nina Mott next.
Thank you, Mr. President. being mindful of the time, I wanted to just put on the record that I agree with my colleagues, Chief Defender Hudson, that your work is absolutely incredible and necessary. And would ask if we had more time for you to talk a little bit about what pay equity would mean even beyond this for your folks, but I do believe that you deserve it. That having been said, I want to say that as we discussed at a hearing in March, the defenders have continued to step up to do more of this incredible work to safely reduce our jail population by over 1,000 folks in a year. Thank you for that. How does your office contribute to the recently launched emergency bail process, and what funding have you received for this vital work to date?
Thank you, Councilmember. Really quickly, so we have not received any funding or supports to staff the early bail hearings, and I have
No funding.
No funding or supports. We're doing it in partnership with the First Judicial District, with the DAO, and us, where we do exhaustive work to look through everyone who we think can safely be released. The folks who we are getting out through early bail hearing, 48% of them have had their cases dismissed. These are not clients that should have been incarcerated in the first place, but we will continue and hope to expand should we get the support to do so.
Thank you, Chief Defender Hudson. And one question, and I'm done. For District Attorney Larry Krasner, sir. Let me just say that the work of the Conviction Integrity Unit, I believe it speaks for itself, leading to dozens of exonerations and commutations, as well as new sentences in hundreds of juvenile cases. We talk a lot about rebuilding trust.
Ask that question, Member Roy.
We talk a lot about rebuilding trust with communities who have long faced injustice. How does the Conviction Integrity Unit advance the work of actually rebuilding trust? Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, it's absolutely crucial that people believe that we are trying to be fair, because that means if they're sitting on a jury, they're not assuming, I'll leave the names out of it, that a certain prosecutor's up there lying to them, hiding documents, tricking them. It becomes easier when you play fair to prove to a jury that you have established a case beyond a reasonable doubt. Witnesses are more willing to come forward because they know you're not going to try to jack them up and claim they committed the crime, which has happened historically. Victims are more willing to come forward because they know that they are not somehow going to be vilified and told that they are the problem. So trust is absolutely crucial. One of my favorite little anecdotes, I'll be quick, Council President, I promise.
I didn't say nothing.
One of my favorite little anecdotes is we came into office, started doing what we're doing. And there was kind of an old school prosecutor in the office who changed how she did closing arguments. You know what she said? She said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I want you to know that we have come here and presented this evidence in good faith, and you know we're being honest and we're being fair because this is the new district attorney's office. Okay? She worked in the old one, but she figured she had a better shot at hitting that home run if she made sure people remembered who she was working for, okay? That's not about me. That's about integrity. That's about setting a standard that even though we're gonna make mistakes like everybody else, we are trying as hard as we can to play fair and to be fair. And that changes everything. It changes everything in terms of the ability, not only for our office, but other law enforcement entities to operate because people believe in it.
I thank you for that response, and I'm just grateful to know that that is happening. I believe we are living in a time, and have been for a little while, where trust in institutions is deteriorating and eroding as a result of an inability to be able to move with certain values like integrity. So to be able to create and set up a situation whereby we can actually see some genuine justice within our criminal legal system as it relates to convictions or what have you, I believe goes a long way in re-engendering a sense of trust, and therefore hopefully it'll turn into more civic engagement in a time when we need more of that as well. So thank you, DA, thank you, Solicitor, as well as thank you, Defender Hudson, for all the work that you do. I'm done. Thank you.
Councilmember Dr. Nina Mai, Councilmember Isaiah Thomas, Councilmember Young.
Thank you, Council President. Wanted to follow up with the DA about sexual assault cases. And one is, I heard you say a 9% decrease in sexual assault cases that you're prosecuting. Maybe I misheard you. If you could address that and say how much of your budget is allocated to work on sexual assault cases, and the new forensic lab, will that help in more clearance of these cases?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. The data indicates that this year as compared to last year, meaning on this date, we are down 8.86% in reported rape incidents. And obviously we know there's a great complexity to the reporting of these cases. But I also think it's fair to say as we get farther from the pandemic, that the level of reporting is liable to be a little more accurate than it was during the pandemic, when victims were often basically stuck in the home with an offender in a way that was affecting them. Our two most active trial units in the office are the Family Violence Sexual Assault Unit and the Homicide Non-Fatal Shooting Unit. They try more cases than any other units, and therefore these are relatively large in terms of the staffing. It takes up a significant part of the budget because they are so crucial, and because the work is so intense, it does often involve completing jury trials, much higher level of preparation. I can't give you a number off the top of my head, but I would think that we're probably looking at staffing in that unit on the order of 35 people, probably looking at a number of attorneys that at the moment, and yes, of course, it changes with people coming in and exiting the unit. We're probably looking at more than 20 attorneys who are actively working on these cases. So it's an essential part of our office. It's something that we consider to be vital. Most people, when they're asked to say what are the most heinous crimes, most people are going to say murder and rape. That's the first thing that's going to come out of their mouths. I think that viewpoint reflects how the general public feels. It also reflects how I feel in terms of the gravity of this. And that's not to minimize the other offenses. They're incredibly important as well. But we take them very seriously. Would a state-of-the-art forensics lab help with this? That absolutely. You know, one of the more interesting developments that I've seen in the last 5 years.
Just a point of information.
Yes, sir.
District Attorney Krasner, because we know you've been sounding the alarm about when we have this state-of-the-art forensic lab, that it was going to increase the quality of prosecution to make sure we make our city safer. That bill has been introduced. I think we're waiting for a hearing, and so at some point in time, we will be building the brand new forensic lab, and so I just wanted to state that for the record.
And that is marvelous. I was aware it was underway. It's been a years-long project, and I applaud everybody who supports that, because keeping innocent people out of jail and solving unsolved cases against people who've done terrible crimes is essential. Just one example of that is a 30-year-old rape murder that was solved with the help of the FBI, and was solved using something known as genealogical DNA. You know, in the old days, you had to have a DNA match to prove a case. You don't anymore. These days, we can go into a giant database of people who might be related to a perpetrator, even a distant relation to a perpetrator, and we can work through that DNA to identify families in which the perpetrator is a member. That's how that case got solved. That was a man who not only raped and murdered a medical student 30 years ago, but he raped and attempted rape to rape multiple other people, and then slashed 2 people with a machete. We're talking about a vicious human being who was living in a tent in the woods off the grid without a cell phone. His family didn't even know he was alive. But that's the power of this work. When the FBI showed up and said, we got magic, and we said, please, that's the power of this work, and that's the power of those resources.
Well, thank you. Science rules. And I also just want to quickly wrapping up quickly, human trafficking issues that are going to crop up in 2026 with the increased sports venues and all of that. And I had talked to you about this. We're going to follow up. I want to make sure there's money allocated for us to do that work in conjunction with the Attorney General and all the groups who do the work. We want to make sure that you are thinking about that, and I'll be following up with that on that issue as well.
Thank you, Council Member. We have a specific ask in that regard in our budget, and I'm with you 100%.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad. Councilmember Thomas, Young, then wrapping us up is Councilmember Phillips.
Thank you, Council President. I want to just take a couple steps back to the line of questioning that I had started earlier, and I just want to take a moment to just say, City Solicitor, I think you are doing a good job, and your office and my office has had a great working relationship throughout the course of my time here and your time. So I just wanted to provide that context. Back to the earlier line of questioning. You said when we were talking about the exemption, you represent the city of Philadelphia, is that correct?
Correct.
So when you say you represent the city of the Philadelphia, who did you talk to determine the city's position? So in order for us, you had to take a position, right? We got sued, and you had to take a position. And you've taken a position that you want to settle based on the best interest of the city because you represent the city.
Correct.
Who did you talk to determine the city's position?
On that specific case?
Yes.
Or generally about the exemption?
About both exemptions on both BERT and use of occupancy.
So, I mean, on the exemption itself, it is council's decision whether to repeal the exemption, right? So I am telling you from the city solicitor's perspective that it's too risky to continue this exemption. And that is the briefing that we've provided to your office, to a number, city council as a whole, a couple different times.
So I think what I'm trying to get at is there are bills and recommendations on behalf of the city. And
Correct.
No one, I don't know about other members of council, but no one said, well, this is the lawsuit. What is your position? I work for you. You're my client. So if you're the lawyer and I'm the client, and how can you feel comfortable telling me my position without having a conversation with me? You took a position. You already took the position and then briefed us on the position that you took. You didn't say, this is the case. This is the dynamic. This is what I recommend. But because I work for you and I'm your lawyer, do you say I should go forward with this?
So the litigation is in my purview, right? And that consultation was made with the finance director, with the revenue commissioner, with the mayor. That falls in my purview. Under the charter, I decide what litigation is going forward and not going forward. For you all, what you decide is whether you're going to repeal this exemption. And that is the briefing that we have all provided to you. Because there will be another case.
I think that we have a difference of opinion, not necessarily to where we are, but how we got here. I don't think that I'm arguing whether or not you've made the right decision around the position we should take on use of occupancy and BERT. I think I'm worried about the precedent that this set, because it gives me the perception that the law department feels like it's okay to discuss things with the executive branch of government exclusively and then come to council and tell us, well, this is the position that the city has taken. That's how it feels.
When it comes to litigation, right, unless that is litigation involving city council on your ordinances, which we would talk to you about, right?
So that's right there.
That's different.
But these are city council ordinances. These are city council initiatives. Last I checked, the BERT exemption was a bill that was introduced by former councilwoman Maria Sanchez. This was a project that came out of her office that she worked on. So we recognize that she's not a part of this legislative body right now, but it comes from...
This is a state constitutional issue, number one.
Yes.
And there were other claims in the case. There are other claims in the case that have nothing to do with this, because what it comes down to is these companies aren't owed money back, right? They're owed money back on these other claims.
So I think now you're moving into a legal argument, and I think my pushback is a process. I'm not talking about the legality of it. I'm talking about the process. And I just want to be very clear, because this is not just about me. This is about all of the members on city council. And not just about us in 2025. There will be a 2030. There will be a 2035. And I would hate for my colleagues over here who did all this great work in 2025 to be put in a position where it gets repealed without a conversation with the legislative branch of government, because those specific people are no longer here. I think you've proven my point, because we both know firsthand that when it's a city council initiative, you guys come to us. I'm saying this is a city council initiative. The exemption around BERT, the exemption around use of occupancy, they're both city council-based initiatives. And I think the concern that I have is the precedent that's being set around this process, because it makes it okay for the administration to work with the law department to unilaterally make decisions without coming before this body, specifically on projects that came out of the legislative branch of government.
But let me be clear that in the resolution of this case, we're not agreeing, and the settlement isn't out yet, but we're not agreeing to enjoin the enforcement of your city council bill. The resolution is on the monetary claims in this case. So it's very different than the law department agreeing to enjoin the collection or non-collection of the tax, right?
So I'm going
That's why-
to talk to some lawyers because I can't go get my own lawyer. So I'll talk to some lawyers that I know, and I'll get those opinions from some friends that I know who are lawyers, and we can agree to disagree for this moment.
Sure.
And I look forward to having a conversation at another time because we do have some lawyers. I'm looking at a couple of them on the floor right now. Let me just give some homework assignments, Council President, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I just want to make sure that we can get these questions answered for the record. City Solicitor, don't have to answer this right now, but I want to know how much have we spent on lawsuits over the last 5 years in the city of Philadelphia, specifically lawsuits around vehicles that started with traffic stops. We know that crime has been down significantly over the last couple years, and we want to see how much money have we saved on lawsuits specifically dealing with traffic stops. Chief Public Defender, you guys have the Driving Equality Dashboard. That is an initiative that you started out of your office, and that data is something that's readily available to the constituents of the city of Philadelphia. I want to know a fiscal number. What does it cost to maintain that dashboard and to expand that work? You don't have to answer it right now, but to be able to expand that work to put us in a position to address some of them technology concerns that you had. Last but not least, District Attorney Krasner, we passed the Exonerated Justice Bill because of the work of the District Attorney's Office, specifically the Exoneration Unit. You have seen more people exonerated during your time in the city of Philadelphia than probably the entire existence of the city combined before you got there. We want to know specifically how much money has these exonerations cost the city of Philadelphia. We also want to know who's taking advantage of the exoneration restorative package that we passed to ensure that people are exonerated, have resources that they can benefit from. And then last but not least, specifically around exoneration, we want to know any data around recidivisms for people who've been exonerated, and we also want to we want your office to look into the fact that the courts, and I know this from personal experience, that the courts are no longer as open to exonerating people in the past compared to now asking people for time served. So in writing, if you can let us know why the courts are moving in that direction and the implications that can have on our city moving forward, that would be appreciated. Council President, I'm going to stop right there because I know we're pressed for time, and I'll follow your lead as it relates to what's in writing and what gets answered right now. Thank you, Council President. Thank you all for what you do.
Provided in writing, because I do want the last two members to get their questions on the record before we wrap up. So make sure you provide the chair the response to his questions so we can provide to all members of council. Councilmember Young, and then Councilmember Dr. Anthony Phillips. We wrap up.
Thank you. I want to put my first two questions on the record for the city solicitor. Can you talk to us about how close you work with the Office of OPA when it comes to tax appeals and actual tax assessments to proactively get accurate assessments so we are not having to litigate so many appeals? That's the first question for you. And the second question is, do you think it's appropriate for when city council passes a charter change that then gets voted on by the public to be implemented, do you think it's appropriate for city council to sue for an injunction when such charter change is not been implemented by the executive branch?
With respect to OPA, we have a unit dedicated to OPA, and so we work with them both on setting up the assessments and further sort of defending the appeals, right? We do kind of all of it, and including when it gets to the tax appeal phase. I have personally been involved with conversations with OPA and CLS and other community partners on ensuring that the assessments are fair and non-discriminatory. So I have personally been in those conversations. Just because there are a large number of appeals doesn't mean the assessment was not accurate, but we all know those stories of, two buildings right next to each other and they're valued differently. So we have handled thousands of these cases. We ride along with the OPA, we assist them, we make adjustments, and so sort of at bottom, we are intricately involved in tweaking the assessments every year as we go on. And then your second question, there was a charter change.
Yeah, so
and
it's a hypothetical, right? But if there's a charter change that's approved by this body, approved by the voters, but the executive branch chooses not to implement that charter change, is it appropriate for council to sue for an injunction to get the implementation of that charter change?
Before you answer that, you represent both of us. So
yeah, it's a separation of powers issue again, right? And it is a hypothetical, and we'd have to sort in, what the charter change was, but there are certain things within the prerogative of the legislative branch and the people, and certain things that the executive branch has control over. And so, in a vacuum, I don't know the answer until I know the specifics.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I get one more question on the record for the district attorney? I'm sorry, I haven't asked a question yet to the DA.
She can respond on the record because Rue is giving me the scowling eye because I cut her short. So
Thank
go
you.
ahead, Mr. Esquire.
So to Mr. Krasner, thank you for being here. You brought some victim services organizations here today. What is the difference? What's the difference between funding these victim service organizations through the district attorney's office versus the city's managing director's office and other offices?
I just want to be clear. I'm supposed to answer as opposed to put that on a record. I'll do whatever the process is.
On the record, please. If you really
Go ahead, sir.
very briefly.
Okay, so there are services, historically, money has gone to the DA's office not only for its own internal operation, which is quite elaborate, but also for regional, outside, you might say outside, contracted victim witness services organizations. That goes back a very long time. These are all organizations that have operated under contracts with the DA's office. We don't get that money. The money passes through, and the money that goes to these organizations does not simply come from...
Don't say pass through in the chambers, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We don't do pass throughs.
So
Class 200,
we
sorry.
get the
Sorry.
operations of it,
Class
but
200
what's the
allocation.
difference?
You support in partnership with them, sir.
So I think we get
That
the
is
operational
correct. Never
aspect
been a
of it.
better
It's just
partnership.
what's the difference between the funding mechanism coming from your office versus the managing director's office, Office of Victim Advocates, public safety office, whatever. What's the difference in that?
Well, I will say there seem to be all kinds of layers here that maybe we should all sit down at some point and try to sort out. I will say that, because I don't think it actually makes a whole lot of sense to have different entities doing the same thing in silos, especially if we are in a situation where the most crucial information about danger, the most crucial information about the case itself are held consistent with Pennsylvania law by the DA's office. So there may be some efficiencies to be had here, but please remember that because we are prosecuting these cases, we are privy to all of this information that is law enforcement only. And therefore, if we know that someone involved in a case is a member of a shooting group because we have intelligence from the FBI or something of that sort, it enables us to figure out where the relocation money should be spent. It enables us to be in close contact with victims, witnesses, et cetera, and to do so in the context of what's actually happening in the case. Is this retaliatory? Is there a motivation involved? Could there be aspects of self-defense here? What's actually going on? So I'm not going to discredit any other entities or in any way tear them down for what they do, but what I am saying is that we are uniquely positioned to have access to a lot of information about the case, which does put us in a position to work closely with these outside contracted organizations on the protection of those folks, accompaniment in court, what their needs may be, how can we help pay for the funeral, things of that sort. I view it as a very positive collaboration. They do amazing work. That work needs to be supported and funded. But as for other structural aspects, are there other efficiencies to be had? We're always open for that conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And last, Councilmember Dr. Anthony Phillips.
70 seconds. I just want to clarify something I couldn't get to do during my point of information because of time. I am in favor of due process. I'm going to tell you why. Because if I get pulled over by the city of Philadelphia for something, I deserve a hearing if I don't agree with it, and I deserve the right to appeal that hearing. What I'm saying is that the city of Philadelphia has archaic ways when it comes to handling due process. We have to handle due process in a much more expedited way, given the seriousness of our community. I went to school, I know a couple things about these things and how this works, so I'm not familiar with it. What I'm saying is the quick comment question I have for you is this. What should happen for serious violations around alcohol distribution, drug distribution, illegal sales of things, there should be, the violation should get the notice. The business gets the notice saying violation for Lucy's. That could be an example. After the business learns about they're in violation of selling Lucy's, there should be a certain amount of time that they get to make an appeal for that violation. But as soon as they get that violation, there should be a cease and desist order. Once they make the appeal, they can begin to continue to operate their business. After they make the appeal, there should be a hearing that they can defend their case, showing that they're not in wrong or whatever their defense is. We can then determine through a judge after that to say, hey, are they guilty or they're not guilty? Once they're determined to be guilty, then we shut them down. If they're not guilty, they can continue. But what's occurring in the city of Philadelphia, and the question I want you to think about more innovative, I want this on the record, is how can we expedite the due process so this could be a lot more quicker when these serious violations are happening? And then just really quickly, I just want to know, what can we do to stop giving these businesses so many warnings for them to get it correct to the point where we don't have the time? So I just wanted to state that.
Yes, and thank you. We will follow up because some of the changes are code changes, some of them are process changes, some of it's preempted by the Alcohol and Drug Bureau, so we will follow up.
Thank you, Council President.
I must apologize. There's one sentence I need to put on the record in reference to Councilmember Young's question. It is included in our testimony, but I think it's very important to answer his question. And that is that the DA's office is statutorily required by Pennsylvania statute under the Crime Victims Act and the Juvenile Act, as well as Pennsylvania rules of juvenile court procedure, to ensure that victims of crime whose cases are processed within the criminal and juvenile justice system receive all rights, notifications, and services to which they are entitled. So we have a statutory requirement that does not necessarily apply to some of the other entities who are helping to provide these services.
And I was just saying, I just think our community needs due process. That's why I'm passionate about this. But go back to Young.
So,
I'm sorry if I interrupted. I did not mean to interrupt if that's what I just did.
no, just for the record, Councilman Dr. Phillips was just responding to the city solicitor, just saying, want to make sure there's a due process law. It is frustrating when I'm dealing with AutoZone, I call them out, in Southwest Philadelphia, and you got guys inside the parking lot doing illegal mechanic work that's holding all the tenants, including a daycare center, hostage. And then we have to wait till they go to court. And it's like we treating them with kid gloves, right? And it's probably procedural things, right? But when I get a call from LNI saying, well, we're in court, and they get their chance to do their due process and so forth. But in the meanwhile, they aren't improving their behavior. And so the whole legality of it, I think, need to be reviewed in terms of how we hold the bad actors accountable. Because we do know some way, somehow, depending on what neighborhood you live in, somehow the law just works more efficiently than other neighborhoods. I'm just being quite frank in terms of my experience as a young man growing up in the city of Philadelphia. So I dare you open up one of those stores in certain neighborhoods and sell certain things. In some way, somehow, the law magically works in that neighborhood's favor to expedite and address a particular issue to make sure a certain store doesn't open up. And I think, in this particular body, there's an appetite of advocacy around just holding the bad actors who prey on our communities day in and day out. And so it's a longer conversation, and obviously we'll work with not only just the solicitor's office, but also district attorney who has environmental clean and green unit to actually go after the bad actors that's doing illegally dumping. And like due process, if you're illegally dumping, once you get caught, you shouldn't be allowed to do business in the city of Philadelphia no more. Like, period. Not you should get a chance to come back, because that means you have a lack of respect for the neighborhoods that you're doing the illegal dumping in. But it's a longer conversation. This is democracy in action. We thank the three of you for being here today. To Ms. Hudson, we will make sure we stay on top of addressing the issues regarding the Defenders Association. And so thank you for being here. Thank all three of you for being here. District Attorney Larry Krasman, City Solicitor Rene Garcia. We will be in recess for the afternoon session for the Sheriff's Office until 2:30.
Thank you, City Council President.
Thank you, Council President.